The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. But what happens when something from beyond the stars arrives? A warrior whose power flows from a different source entirely, following laws this universe has never known. The twin suns of Tatooine blazed mercilessly over the dune sea, their heat shimmering across endless waves of sand. The day seemed no different from any other on the desert world, until the sky tore open. It wasn't a ship malfunction or hyperspace miscalculation. This was something else entirely. A ripple in reality itself, a wound in the fabric of space that screamed with colors no sentient eye had ever witnessed. The rift split the air above the desert with a sound like thunder and breaking glass, and from it tumbled a figure wreathed in golden light. Krillin hit the sand hard. The impact should have killed anyone. Instead, it sent up a massive plume of dust and created a crater 20 feet wide. The warrior from Earth lay face down for a moment, his orange gi scorched and torn, his body aching in ways he'd never experienced. His head was spinning, not from the fall, but from the horrible wrongness of everything around him. What the hell just happened? Krillin groaned, pushing himself up on his hands and knees. Sand cascaded off his back. He blinked rapidly, trying to clear his vision, trying to make sense of the impossible situation. One moment he'd been on the lookout with Goku, Gohan, and the others. Master Roshi had been telling one of his inappropriate stories. Bulma had been tinkering with some new gadget. Everything had been normal, well, as normal as life ever got for a Z-fighter. Then Shenron had appeared. Someone had made a wish. There'd been a blinding light, a sensation of being pulled through something vast and cold, and then this. Krillin stood slowly, his trained senses immediately cataloging his surroundings. Desert, extreme heat, twin suns overhead, wait, twin suns. His eyes widened. The sky was wrong. The air tasted wrong. Even gravity felt slightly different, though his body adjusted automatically. "Okay, don't panic," he muttered to himself, brushing sand from his gi. "You've dealt with androids, aliens, magical demons, and literal gods. You can figure this out." He closed his eyes and reached inward, trying to sense Kai's signatures the way Master Roshi had taught him decades ago. Nothing. Not the comforting presence of Goku's massive power, not Gohan's steadily growing strength, not even the background hum of Earth's billions of life forms, just emptiness, or not quite emptiness, something else. Something that felt almost alive but completely alien to everything he understood about Kai. Krillin's heart rate spiked. For the first time in years, genuine fear crept into his chest. "Guys," he called out, his voice swallowed by the desert wind. "Goku, Gohan, anyone." Silence answered him. He was about to call out again when his enhanced hearing caught something else, the low rumble of engines. Krillin dropped into a defensive stance instinctively, his body responding to potential threat before his mind could process it. Over a nearby dune came a vehicle unlike anything he'd ever seen. A boxy, sand-colored transport hovering a few feet off the ground on some kind of repulsor technology. The vehicle stopped about 50 yards away. Krillin could see figures inside through the viewport, humanoid shapes at least. The door slid open with a hiss of hydraulics, and 3 beings emerged. They looked human mostly. Rough clothing, protective wrappings against the sand, and weapons that seemed like a cross between guns and something from a sci-fi movie. The lead figure, a Wookiee with leathery skin and a topknot, raised his weapon, definitely a weapon, and shouted something in a language Krillin didn't understand. "Whoa, whoa." Krillin raised his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I don't want any trouble." The Wookiee shouted again, more aggressively this time. His companions fanned out, their own weapons trained on Krillin. One of them, a scarred human with cruel eyes, barked something that sounded like a question. "I don't understand you," Krillin said carefully, keeping his hands visible but ready. His combat instincts were screaming warnings. These weren't good people. He could see it in their body language, the casual way they pointed deadly weapons at an unarmed stranger. The Wookiee gestured sharply with his blaster. The message was clear enough: comply or die. Krillin sighed. "Yeah, I was afraid of that." The Wookiee fired. The bolt of red energy that erupted from the weapon moved fast, but not nearly fast enough. Krillin sidestepped casually, the superheated plasma passing through the space his head had occupied a millisecond before. The three thugs froze in shock as their target blurred into motion. 1 second Krillin was 50 feet away. The next, he was standing between the three armed men, his hand resting gently on the Wookiee's weapon. "I said I don't want trouble," he repeated quietly. The Wookiee yanked the trigger repeatedly. Nothing happened. He looked down to find his blaster crushed into a compact ball of useless metal and circuitry, Krillin having compressed it with casual pressure from his fingers. "But if you guys insist," Krillin moved. To the thugs, he simply vanished. The scarred human spun around wildly, trying to track the target, when a tap on his shoulder made him freeze. He turned slowly to find Krillin standing there, smiling apologetically. The warrior's finger flicked against the human's forehead, a gentle tap by Krillin's standards. The thug flew backward 15 feet and crashed into the sand, unconscious before he hit the ground. The third attacker, a Rhodian with bulbous eyes, screamed something and fired wildly. Energy bolts stitched the air where Krillin had been standing. The warrior appeared behind him, chopped precisely at the base of his neck, and the Rhodian crumpled. The Wookiee leader was already running for the transport, his survival instincts overriding any thought of fighting. Krillin let him get almost to the vehicle before appearing directly in his path. The thug skidded to a halt, terror written across his alien features. Okay, Krillin said, holding up his hands again. "I really need you to calm down and help me understand what's going on. Where am I? What planet is this?" The Wookiee gibbered something incomprehensible, his eyes fixed on Krillin like he was seeing a ghost. "Great language barrier." Krillin rubbed the back of his head, a gesture of frustration he'd picked up from Goku. "Look, I'm not going to hurt you if you don't attack me again. I just need." The sound of more engines cut him off. Krillin's head snapped toward the horizon where a larger vehicle was approaching, this one armed with an actual mounted gun. And behind it, 2 more transports were cresting the dune. The Wookiee saw Krillin's momentary distraction and bolted, diving into his transport and gunning the engine. The vehicle shot away across the desert, leaving twin trails in the sand. Krillin watched him go, then turned his attention to the approaching convoy. These vehicles bore markings, some kind of insignia of a slug-like creature. The lead transport's mounted gun swiveled toward Krillin and opened fire. Heavy blaster bolts tore through the air, each one powerful enough to punch through durasteel armor. Krillin's body moved on pure instinct, weaving between the energy blasts with fluid grace. His training under Master Roshi, Kami, and even his time in the afterlife with King Kai had honed his reflexes to superhuman levels. These weapons, whatever they were, simply couldn't track him. He landed lightly on the sand as the firing stopped, the gunner apparently confused about where his target had gone. Krillin cupped his hands at his side, golden energy crackling between his palms. Kamehameha. The air around him began to shimmer with power. In the Dragon Ball universe, this would have been nothing, a fraction of his true strength. But here, in this strange galaxy, something felt different. The energy came slower, required more concentration. It was like trying to breathe underwater. Kamehameha. The assembled thugs in the 3 transports, at least a dozen armed beings, stared in confusion at the glowing warrior and the impossible energy building in his hands. Several raised weapons, but none fired, transfixed by the sight. Achiye. The blue-white wave of pure Kai erupted from Krillin's palms, a concentrated beam of energy that screamed across the desert. It struck the lead transport dead center, and the vehicle simply ceased to exist. The Kamehameha wave punched through metal, circuitry, and engine as if they were paper, then continued on to carve a glowing trench through the sand dune behind it. When the light faded, there was only silence. The 2 remaining transports sat motionless for 3 heartbeats. Then, as one, they turned and fled at maximum speed, their drivers wanting nothing to do with whatever this bald, glowing warrior was. Krillin let them go, breathing heavily. That technique had taken way more out of him than it should have. His Kai reserves, normally vast after years of training and multiple power-ups, felt diminished. Not gone, but muted somehow, like trying to access power through a filter. "What is going on with my energy?" he muttered, examining his hands. The golden aura that normally surrounded him during exertion flickered uncertainly before stabilizing. Before he could contemplate further, his enhanced hearing picked up new sounds, different engines higher pitched. He looked up to see small, sleek craft approaching from a different direction. These were faster, more advanced looking. As they drew closer, Krillin could make out insignia that matched nothing on the thugs' vehicles. The craft, 3 of them, circled him once before landing in a triangle formation, kicking up massive clouds of sand. Figures emerged, but these were different. They wore flight suits and carried themselves with military discipline. One of them, a woman with short dark hair and sharp eyes, raised a hand in greeting rather than a weapon. "Stand down," she called in that same incomprehensible language. Then, seeing Krillin's confused expression, she tapped something on her wrist. When she spoke again, her words somehow made sense. "Can you understand me now?" Krillin blinked in surprise. Yes I can, how did you?" "Translation device," the woman interrupted, her hand resting cautiously on her holstered blaster but not drawing it. "We saw your display of force. Those were Jabba's enforcers. You just made a very powerful enemy stranger." "Jabba?" Krillin shook his head. "Look, I don't know who that is. I don't know where I am. One minute I was on Earth, the next I'm crash landing in this desert and people are shooting at me. Can someone please tell me what's going on?" The woman exchanged glances with her companions. One of them, a blue-skinned Twi'lek male, muttered something that sounded skeptical. The woman studied Krillin carefully, her tactical mind clearly analyzing threat levels. "Earth," she repeated. "That's not in any star chart I've ever seen. And that energy attack, that wasn't any weapon I recognize. No tech signature, no power cell, just..." She gestured at the smoking trench in the sand where the Kamehameha had carved its path. "Raw energy, like Force lightning, but completely different." "Force lightning?" Krillin's confusion deepened. That was just a Kamehameha wave, basic Kai technique. Where I come from, that's like Martial Arts 101. Now it was the woman's turn to look confused. "Kai, you're not force sensitive." "I don't know what that means." The standoff continued for a moment, both sides trying to make sense of the other. Finally, the woman seemed to reach a decision. She straightened and spoke formally. "My name is Lieutenant Kara Sune, Rebel Alliance Reconnaissance. If half of what I'm seeing is true, you're either the most dangerous being on Tatooine right now, or the most valuable potential ally we could ask for." She paused. "Probably both." "Rebel Alliance," Krillin latched onto the word rebel. "You're fighting against something." "Against the Galactic Empire," Kara said, her voice hardening. "A tyrannical regime that's enslaved entire systems and exterminated anyone who stands against them. If you're really from somewhere beyond our galaxy, then you've stumbled into a war zone." Krillin felt a familiar weight settle into his chest. How many times had he heard similar words? How many tyrants had he helped fight? Frieza, the android, Cell, Majin Buu. The names and faces changed, but evil seemed universal. "I've fought tyrants before," he said quietly. "But first, I need to figure out how to get back home. My friends, my family, they're probably worried sick." Kara nodded slowly. "We might be able to help with that. The rebellion has access to technology and information the Empire keeps suppressed. But right now, you need to get off this planet. Within an hour, half the bounty hunters in the sector are going to know about the glowing warrior who destroyed one of Jabba's crews. Not to mention Imperial forces. They monitor for unusual energy signatures, and that," she gestured at the destruction, "definitely qualifies as unusual." Krillin looked around at the alien desert, the twin suns beating down, the impossible situation he'd found himself in. Somewhere out there was a way home. He just had to find it. And if these rebels were fighting against evil, well, old habits died hard. "All right," he said finally, "lead the way. But I'm warning you now, I'm not great with complicated plans or political stuff, where I come from. I'm more of a punch the bad guy until he stops being bad kind of fighter." Despite the tension, Kara cracked a small smile. "You might fit in better than you think." As Krillin boarded the rebel transport, climbing into the cockpit of a vehicle that seemed to defy everything he understood about physics, he cast one last look at the desert sky. Somewhere beyond those stars was Earth. Somewhere were his friends, his wife, his daughter. He'd find his way back. He always did. But first, it seemed, he'd stumbled into yet another fight. The story of his life, really. The transport lifted off, engines humming with power, and carried the warrior from Earth toward his destiny in a galaxy far, far away. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The police precinct smelled like burnt coffee, stale sweat, and bureaucratic despair. Krillin sat in an interrogation room that was too small, too gray, and too depressing for someone who just watched a young woman die. The metal chair creaked under his weight, not because he was heavy, but because it was cheap. Two detectives sat across from him. The older one, Detective Ramirez, had the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much. The younger one, Detective Chen, kept glancing at his notepad like the answers might materialize if he stared hard enough. "So let me get this straight," Ramirez said, rubbing his temples. "You're telling me you're from another dimension. You arrived here by accident through some kind of teleportation mishap. You crashed into the Deep's personal aquarium at Vought Tower. You witnessed A-Train kill Robin Campbell. You assaulted multiple Vought security personnel and 2 members of the Seven, and you claimed to have special abilities that allowed you to fly, shoot energy from your hands." Krillin nodded patiently. That's accurate, yes. And you have no identification, no passport, no driver's license, no social security number, no birth certificate, nothing. Correct, those things don't exist where I'm from, at least not for everyone. Chen leaned forward. Mr. Krillin, that's your full name, just Krillin. Just Krillin. Where I'm from, surnames aren't always common. My wife's name is Android 18, if that helps establish a pattern. Both detectives exchanged glances. Your wife is an android, Ramirez said flatly. Well, technically she's a cyborg, human base, mechanical enhancements, but she prefers android because it sounds cooler. Krillin smiled slightly at the memory. She's probably worried sick right now. I was supposed to be gone for an hour, not however long I've been here. Mr. Krillin, Chen said carefully, are you experiencing any mental distress, hallucinations, delusions? We can get you evaluated. I'm not crazy. Krillin's voice remained calm but firm. I know how this sounds. If someone told me this story back home, I'd probably think they were insane too, but it's the truth. I can prove it if you'll let me. Prove it how? Ramirez asked. Krillin held up one finger. A small ball of golden Kai energy formed at the tip, glowing softly in the fluorescent light of the interrogation room. Both detectives jumped back, Chen's hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm. It's perfectly safe, Krillin said, letting the energy dissipate. That's Kai life energy. Where I'm from, martial artists learn to manipulate it. Use it for attack, defense, flight, sensing other people's energy. It's as natural as breathing once you learn how. The door to the interrogation room burst open. A tall woman in a sharp business suit strode in, flanked by two lawyers and what appeared to be a Vought PR representative. This interview is over, the woman announced. Detectives, my name is Ashley Barrett, Senior Vice President of Hero Management at Vought International. My client. Client, Ramirez interrupted. This man assaulted your people. A misunderstanding that Vought is willing to overlook given the extraordinary circumstances. Ashley's smile was professional and completely empty of warmth. Mr. Krillin was clearly disoriented after his accident. We're prepared to cover all damages, medical expenses for our injured personnel, and provide Mr. Krillin with comprehensive support services, housing, documentation, employment, while he adjusts to his new situation. Krillin stood up slowly. I don't want anything from Vought. Ashley's smile never wavered. Mr. Krillin, you're in a very precarious legal position. No documentation, no identity, wanted for questioning regarding multiple felonies. Vought can make all of that go away. We help people like you all the time, individuals with special abilities who need assistance integrating into society. People like me, Krillin's eyes narrowed. You mean people you can control, people you can turn into your corporate products like the Seven. That's a very cynical interpretation of. I watched one of your heroes kill a girl and try to cover it up. Your leader attacked me when I asked for basic accountability. I'm not interested in anything Vought is selling. One of the lawyers stepped forward. Mr. Krillin, let me be very clear. Without Vaught's assistance, you will be arrested, detained, and likely deported, though we're not sure where you'd be deported to given your unique circumstances. You'll spend months, possibly years, in legal limbo, or you can accept our generous offer and. The lights in the interrogation room flickered, then died completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in dim red. An alarm blared somewhere in the building. What the hell? Chen muttered, reaching for his radio. The door opened again, more forcefully this time. A man with a dark coat and wilder hair strode in, followed by a younger guy with brown hair, Huey, the boyfriend from the loading dock. Right then, the man in the coat said in a thick British accent, "Time to fuck off, Vought. This one's with us." Ashley's eyes widened. "Butcher, what are you doing here?" "Rescuing our new friend from your corporate bollocks, ain't I?" Billy Butcher grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Krillin, mate, you want to stay here and get processed by these wankers, or do you fancy a proper conversation with people who actually give a shit about what you saw?" Ramirez stood up. "Mr. Butcher, you can't just..." "Oh, but I can, detective. See, we got a lovely little insurance policy. All that footage from Vought Tower, the bit where A-Train kills an innocent girl and tries to cover it up, where Homelander attacks a witness. That's all backed up in about 17 different locations. Anything happens to us or our new mate here and it goes public." Butcher looked at Ashley. "Right tragic for Vaught's share price, that would be." Ashley's professional composure cracked slightly. "You're bluffing. We have the only copies of..." "You had the only copies." Huey spoke up for the first time, his voice steadier than it had been at the loading dock. "I uploaded everything to the cloud before your people could stop me. Sorry about your luck." Krillin looked between Butcher and Huey, his Kai senses reading their emotional states. Anger, grief, determination, but also something else. Hope, maybe. They were trying to save him, but they were also clearly operating on the edge of something dangerous. "If I leave with you," Krillin said carefully, "these detectives aren't going to get in trouble, are they?" Ramirez snorted. "Kid, we're already in trouble just by having you in this room. Vaught's going to bury us in paperwork and legal motions regardless. Might as well make it worth something." "There you go," Butcher said. "Proper heroes, these detectives. Actually care about justice and all that shite, unlike the cunts in capes." He looked at Ashley. "We're leaving. You try to stop us and I start uploading. We clear." Ashley's jaw clenched. She pulled out her phone, typed something quickly, then looked up. "You have 48 hours before Vaught's legal team crushes you. Use them wisely." "Oh, we will, love, we will." Butcher gestured for Krillin to follow. The martial artist hesitated for only a moment, then nodded to the detectives and walked out. Huey fell in beside him as they moved through the darkened police station. Someone had clearly sabotaged the electrical system to create this opportunity. "How did you?" Krillin started to ask. "Made of ours is good with electronics," Butcher interrupted. "Right useful in situations like this. Now shut up and keep walking until we're clear." They emerged into an underground parking garage where a battered van waited, engine running. A large black man sat in the driver's seat. Another man with a scruffy beard and accent sat in the passenger seat, and a young Asian woman with wild eyes perched in the back. "Everyone in," Butcher ordered. "Marvin, drive like the fucking wind." The van peeled out of the garage with a screech of tires. Krillin found himself wedged between Huey and the Asian woman, who was studying him with unnerving intensity. "So," Butcher said, turning around in the passenger seat to face Krillin, "welcome to the boys. We're the poor bastards who actually fight Vought and their super-powered wankers. That's driving mother's milk he prefers. Frenchie's up front with me. The lovely lady Jiven you the murder eyes is Kimiko. She don't talk, but she's a right sweetheart once you get to know her. And you've met Huey." "Hi," Huey said weakly. "Thanks for, back at the loading dock, for staying, for not letting them just sweep Robin under the rug." Krillin's expression softened. "I'm sorry I couldn't do more. If I'd arrived even a few seconds earlier." Don't, Huey said. Please don't. I've been doing that all day. If I'd walked faster, if I'd suggested a different route, if I'd held her hand so she couldn't step into the street, it doesn't help. They drove in silence for a few minutes, taking random turns, clearly trying to make sure they weren't followed. Finally, pulled into another underground garage, this one attached to what looked like an abandoned dry cleaning business. Right, Butcher said, climbing out of the van. Let's have ourselves a proper chat, shall we? The hideout was exactly what Krillin expected from a vigilante group, cramped, cluttered with surveillance equipment, walls covered in photos and strings connecting evidence like some conspiracy theorist's fever dream. But unlike conspiracy theorists, these people had actual proof. Photographs of the Seven in compromising positions, financial documents showing Vaught's money trails, medical reports on Compound V's effects. And front and center, a wall dedicated to Homelander, with prime target scrawled above it in red marker. Krillin studied the wall while Butcher poured himself a drink, whiskey, from the smell, and the others settled into various positions around the room. Kimiko continued to watch him like a predator assessing potential prey or ally. So, Butcher said, taking a long sip, Huey tells me you're from another dimension, that you can fly, shoot energy from your hands, and you bitch-slapped Homelander through a wall. That about right? More or less, Krillin confirmed, though I describe it as a defensive push rather than a bitch slap. Defensive push that sent the world's strongest suit flying like a rag doll. Brilliant, Butcher grinned. Tell me, Krillin, you got a problem with bullies? Yes. You got a problem with people who abuse their power? Yes. You got a problem with corporate arseholes who manufacture superheroes like their fucking action figures, inject bobbies with experimental drugs, and cover up murder, rape, and extortion on an industrial scale. Krillin's eyes hardened. What? Butcher gestured at the walls. Welcome to the real world, mate. The world where Vought International controls everything. Where superheroes are just products with good marketing. Where Compound V, the drug that gives people powers, gets injected into bobbies without consent, turning them into experiments. Where the Seven and every other soup team commits crimes with impunity because Vought owns the media, the politicians, and the justice system. That's, Krillin trailed off, his mind racing. That's basically the Red Ribbon Army, or Frieza's empire, or the Saiyans before they reformed. I don't know what any of those things are, Butcher said. But if they're evil bastards who need killing, then yeah, probably similar. Spoke up from where he was reviewing footage on a laptop. We've been fighting Vought for years, trying to expose them, trying to bring them down. But they're too big, too powerful, too connected. Every time we get close, they crush us. Until today, Frenchie added, his French accent thick. Today we have something new. We have footage of Homelander attacking a witness, of A-Train killing someone and running, of Vought trying to cover it up, and we have you, someone who can actually stand up to them. I'm not a weapon, Krillin said quietly. Didn't say you were, Butcher replied. But you're something they've never dealt with before, a proper hero. Someone with real power who can't be bought, threatened, or killed. That scares them, and when they're scared, they make mistakes. Krillin walked over to the wall, studying the evidence more closely. Photos of civilian casualties labeled as collateral damage. Documents showing Vaught's lobbying efforts to avoid suit regulation. Medical records of Compound V test subjects, including children, who died during the process. His fists clenched. Where I come from, Krillin said slowly, I'm considered one of the weaker fighters. I'm a human among gods and aliens who can destroy planets with a thought. But I kept training, kept fighting, because someone had to stand up for the people who couldn't fight back. Someone had to be the hero for normal people. He turned to face the boys. This compound V, you said they injected into Bobby's. Yeah, Huey said. Without consent. Parents don't even know most of the time. Vought has doctors on their payroll who administer it during routine checkups. Most kids don't develop powers. Some die. The ones who do develop powers get recruited or monitored depending on how useful they are. That's disgusting. Krillin's voice was flat, emotionless, the tone of someone containing rage. Where I'm from, there were people called androids. Humans kidnapped and forcibly modified by a mad scientist. One of them became my wife after we helped her break free. I know what it's like to see people treated as experiments. As property, it's wrong. It's always wrong. So you'll help us? Butcher asked. I'll help you expose the truth, Krillin clarified. I'll help you bring them to justice, but I'm not an executioner. If we do this, we do it the right way. We gather evidence. We build a case. We let the legal system handle it. Butcher laughed bitterly. The legal system. Mate, the legal system is owned by Vought. There is no right way when the system is rigged. Then we unrig it. Krillin's voice held absolute conviction. I've seen empires fall. I've watched tyrants crumble. It's possible, but it has to be done right or you're just replacing one kind of tyranny with another. Pretty words, Butcher said, but words don't stop Homelander from lasering people in half. No, Krillin agreed, but I can. The burst caught the Hunter dead center in its starboard engine. The ship spiraled wildly, its pilot fighting for control as flames erupted from the damaged thruster. It clipped an asteroid and went spinning off into the field, out of the fight but not destroyed. Nice shot, Jocelyn whooped. But the other two Hunters were adapting, splitting up to attack from different angles. The transport shuddered as more impacts struck home. Shields at 35%, Tarek warned. Another solid hit and we're done. Krillin gritted his teeth. The turret could only face one direction at a time. He couldn't protect them from both attackers simultaneously. He needed a different approach. Kyra, can you open the rear cargo door? He called into the comms. What? We'll lose atmosphere. Just for a second, trust me. A pause then. You're insane. Jocelyn, get to the cargo bay and hit the emergency seal the moment he gives the word. Krillin, you've got 10 seconds when that door opens before we all suffocate. That's 9 more than I need, Krillin replied, already unbuckling from the turret and pushing through the hatch. He reached the cargo bay just as Jocelyn was sealing his helmet and hitting the door controls. Warning lights flashed red. A klaxon wailed. The rear door split open, and air exploded outward in a rush of decompression. Krillin was sucked toward the opening, but he planted his feet, literally, his Kai-enhanced strength letting him ignore the vacuum trying to tear him away. Through the open door, he could see the 2 Hunter ships bearing down on them, weapons charging for a killing shot. Krillin stepped into space. No suit, no helmet, no ship, just his orange gi, his human body, and his lifetime of training. He'd done this before, fighting in the void, but always in his own universe where Kai flowed naturally. Here, in this force-dominated galaxy, holding his breath and maintaining his energy shield took concentration he wasn't used to needing. The Hunter pilots had perhaps 2 seconds to register what they were seeing before Krillin moved. He flew not with a jetpack or thrusters, but with pure Kai manipulation, his aura flaring golden around him. To the hunter's sensors, it must have looked like an energy being had been born in space. Krillin shot toward the nearest ship like a missile, arms extended, moving faster than any ship could track. The pilot fired desperately. Laser bolts passed through space where Krillin had been. The warrior from Earth weaved between the shots with contemptuous ease, then slammed both palms against the hunter's cockpit canopy. He didn't punch, didn't need to. He simply released a concentrated burst of Kai directly into the ship's hull. The energy wasn't explosive, not exactly. It was focused, controlled like a shaped charge. The cockpit imploded, systems overloaded, and the ship went dead in space, its pilot unconscious from the sudden pressure loss. The third hunter, seeing this impossible sight, broke and ran. Its pilot engaged full thrust, trying to escape toward open space beyond the asteroid field. Krillin considered pursuit, then let it go. The pilot had already been scared straight. He'd spread the word about the glowing warrior, and that might make future encounters less bloody. Besides, Krillin's lungs were burning. Time to get back inside. He flew back to the transport, where Jacen was frantically gesturing through the still-open cargo door. Krillin sailed through, and the moment his feet touched deck plating, the door slammed shut. Air hissed back into the bay, and Krillin gasped, gulping oxygen gratefully. "What the hell was that?" Kara's voice screamed through his headset. You were in space, without a suit. That's impossible." "Not where I come from," Krillin replied between breaths. He was more tired than he should be. That Kai shield had drained him significantly more than it would have back home. The Force-Sky incompatibility was becoming a serious problem. "Is everyone okay?" We're fine," Tarek said slowly. "Shields are regenerating, no critical damage, but Krillin, what you just did." "Can we talk about it later?" Krillin interrupted. "I need to sit down. That took more out of me than expected." He stumbled back toward the passenger area, his legs suddenly weak. Jacen caught him before he fell, helping him into a seat. The rebel's face was pale, his expression somewhere between awe and terror. "You're not human," he whispered. "Can't be." "I'm human," Krillin assured him, leaning back and closing his eyes. "Just a very well-trained one. And I'm from a place where the impossible happens pretty regularly." He managed a weak smile. "You should meet my friend Goku. He makes me look normal." The transport continued through the asteroid field, eventually emerging into clear space. Kara set course for Ord Mantell again, engaging autopilot before coming back to the passenger area. She stood over Krillin, studying him with new eyes. "Those bounty hunters are going to report what they saw," she said quietly. "Within hours, every Imperial intelligence analyst in the sector will know about you. And when Vader hears," she shook her head, "you can't hide anymore. The galaxy needs to know what you can do." "I don't want to be famous," Krillin protested weakly. "I just want to find a way home." "Too late for that." Kara pulled out a small hello communicator. "I need to contact Alliance Command. They need to hear about this. About you." Krillin wanted to argue but couldn't find the energy. The truth was, she was right. He'd made a splash, literally and figuratively. Whatever came next, he'd have to face it head-on. Just like always. As the transport jumped back into hyperspace, carrying him toward an uncertain future, Krillin's last thought before exhaustion claimed him was a simple hope. That somewhere in this vast, strange galaxy, someone would know how to send a short, bald martial artist back to Earth. Ord Mantell was everything Tatooine, green, humid, and teeming with life, both organic and mechanical. The rebel transport descended through thick clouds, emerging over a sprawling cityscape that seemed to have grown without plan or purpose. Buildings of wildly different architectural styles crowded together, connected by suspended walkways and humming with air traffic that made Krillin's head spin. "Welcome to Worldport," Kara announced as they approached a landing platform on the city's outskirts. One of the few places in the galaxy where the Empire, criminals, and rebels can all operate without tripping over each other. Everyone's too busy making credits to care about politics. Krillin pressed his face to the viewport, taking in the alien landscape. Through the crowded skylanes, he could see beings of dozens of different species, some humanoid, others decidedly not. A four-armed creature haggled with a floating jellyfish thing over what looked like scrap metal. A group of armored warriors that reminded him vaguely of sci-fi samurai marched past in perfect formation. So many different aliens, he breathed. Back home, aliens were usually trying to destroy Earth. This is kind of nice, actually. "Don't get too comfortable," Jocelyn warned. "Half the species you see down there would sell you to the Empire for enough credits. The other half would just kill you and take your belongings." The transport settled onto the landing pad with a hiss of hydraulics. Kara stood, checking her blaster and adjusting her jacket. "Our safe house is in the warehouse district. Not glamorous, but it's secure and off the grid. We'll lay low while I contact command." Krillin followed them down the ramp, his boots hitting solid ground for the first time since Tatooine. The air here was thick with moisture, and the smell of ozone and cooking food, and something vaguely chemical he couldn't identify. It reminded him a bit of West City during rush hour, but more aggressive somehow. They'd barely made it 50 meters from the landing pad when Krillin's instincts screamed a warning. He moved without thinking, grabbing Kara and yanking her backward just as a red blaster bolt carved through the space where her head had been. The shot struck a cargo container behind them, leaving a smoking hole in the metal. "Ambush," Tariq shouted, diving behind cover. Figures emerged from between stacked containers and behind parked vehicles, at least a dozen of them, all armed, all focused on the rebel team. But these weren't random muggers. They moved with coordination, taking positions that cut off escape routes. "Jabba's people," Jocelyn called out, his blaster already returning fire. "Worse," Kara said grimly, studying their attackers' armor. "Bounty hunters, professional ones. Someone put out a serious contract." One of the hunters stepped forward, a Trandoshan with scarred scales and cybernetic enhancements that glowed red in the dim light. He held a massive rifle that looked capable of punching through a tank, and when he spoke, a translator collar rendered his hissing speech into basic. "The bald one, Jabba wants him alive. The rest of you acceptable losses." The Trandoshan raised his rifle. "Make this easy and maybe I'll kill you quick." "Yeah, that's not happening," Krillin said, stepping in front of the rebels. He could feel his Kai responding more readily now that he'd had a few hours to rest, though it still felt sluggish. "Look, I don't know what Jabba's paying you, but I'm really not worth the trouble. Just walk away." The Trandoshan laughed, a sound like grinding glass. "The holovids from Tatooine show you destroying a transport with your bare hands and fighting in vacuum. Do you know how much the Empire would pay for a specimen like you? How much Black Sun would bid? You're worth more than this entire city." "Specimen?" Krillin's eyes narrowed. "I'm not anyone's lab rat." "Your choice doesn't enter the equation." The Trandoshan signaled his team. "Take him, kill the others." The landing pad erupted in chaos. Blaster fire came from 3 directions simultaneously. Kara and her team returned fire, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Krillin saw Tarek take a glancing shot to the shoulder, spinning him around with a cry of pain. Enough. Krillin's aura exploded outward, golden energy crackling around his body like lightning. The sheer force of it kicked up a wind that scattered loose debris and made the nearest hunters stagger. Those with helmet sensors probably just had their equipment overload. I said, Krillin repeated, his voice carrying that edge of absolute confidence that came from knowing exactly how much power he had. Walk away. The Trandoshan snarled and fired. Krillin caught the blaster bolt. Not with his hands, with his Kai. The energy projectile froze in midair 3 feet from his chest, held in place by invisible force. Every hunter on the landing pad froze, staring at the impossible sight. Krillin studied the captured bolt with genuine curiosity. It was plasma contained in an electromagnetic field, he realized. Crude compared to Kai, but effective. He flicked his fingers, and the bolt shot back toward its origin, striking the ground at the Trandoshan's feet and making the hunter jump back in alarm. Last warning, Krillin said. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I will defend myself and my friends. To their credit, the bounty hunters didn't run. They were professionals, after all, selected for their ability to handle dangerous targets. They'd probably faced Force users before and survived. They opened fire as one. Krillin moved. To the hunters, he simply vanished. Blaster bolts stitched empty air where he'd stood. Then their formation started collapsing from within as an unseen force struck them down one by one. Krillin wasn't trying to kill them. He could have easily, but these were just people doing a job, not monsters bent on destruction. Instead, he disarmed them with surgical precision. A chop to the wrist here, forcing a hunter to drop his rifle. A tap to the knee there, making another crumple without permanent injury. He moved through them like water, like Master Roshi had taught him decades ago, finding the path of least resistance and maximum efficiency. The Trandoshan, to his credit, tracked Krillin's movements better than the others. When the warrior appeared beside him, the hunter was already swinging his rifle like a club. Krillin caught it with one hand, stopping the heavy weapon's momentum cold. You're good, Krillin admitted, but I've fought people who could destroy planets. No offense, but you're out of your league. He twisted the rifle, bending the barrel into a U-shape with casual strength, then tapped 2 fingers against the Trandoshan's armored chest. The hunter flew backward, crashing through a stack of cargo containers and landing in a groaning heap. 15 seconds after the fight started, it was over. A dozen bounty hunters lay scattered across the landing pad, disarmed, defeated, and thoroughly confused about what had just happened. Krillin stood in the center of the chaos, barely breathing hard, his aura fading back to invisibility. He turned to check on the rebels and found all 3 staring at him with expressions of shock. Tarek, you okay? Krillin asked, nodding the Twi'lek clutching his shoulder. Yes, just a graze. Tarek couldn't seem to take his eyes off the scattered hunters. You took down a dozen armed professionals in under 20 seconds without breaking a sweat. They weren't trying to kill me, Krillin pointed out. Made them sloppy, and honestly, compared to some of the things I've fought, they weren't that tough. He paused, seeing their expressions. That came out wrong. I mean, they're skilled for normal people, I'm not normal. Clearly, Kara said faintly. She shook herself, training reasserting itself. We need to move. Now. That fight was loud and the local security forces will be here any minute. Last thing we need is to answer questions. They hurried from the landing pad, leaving the groaning hunters behind. Kara led them through a maze of alleys and service corridors, taking turns that seemed random but were clearly planned. Krillin followed, his enhanced senses alert for more threats. The safe house turned out to be a nondescript building wedged between a droid repair shop and what smelled like a cantina. Kara used multiple security codes to gain entry, and they found themselves in a sparse but functional space, sleeping quarters, a small galley, and most importantly, a communications array that looked expensive and highly illegal. "Make yourselves comfortable," Kara said, immediately moving to the comm station. "This is going to take a while. I need to establish a secure channel to command, and that means routing through about 6 relay stations." Krillin collapsed onto one of the bunks, suddenly feeling the exhaustion from the past day catch up with him. Between the dimensional journey, the fight with Jabba's thugs, the space battle, and now this ambush, he'd been running on adrenaline. Now that the immediate danger had passed, his body was demanding rest. Jacen was treating Tariq's wound with some kind of medical device that hissed and glowed blue. The injury sealed before Krillin's eyes, the Twi'lek's blue skin knitting back together. "Back to spray," Jacen explained, seeing Krillin's interest. "Medical technology, standard issue for field operations." "We have something similar back home," Krillin said. "Senzu beans. They can heal almost any injury instantly. I wish I had some now, could really use one." "Your home sounds more advanced than ours," Tariq observed, flexing his healed shoulder experimentally. "Different," Krillin corrected. "Not better or worse, just different. We don't have ships like yours or blasters or half this technology, but we have other things. Techniques passed down through martial arts schools, ways to unlock the potential in our bodies. And that's what lets you do what you do, training." "Mostly," Krillin sat up, considering how much to explain. "Where I come from, there's an energy called Kai. It's life force, basically. Every living thing has it. Most people can't sense it or use it, but with proper training, you can learn to manipulate your own Kai. Make yourself stronger, faster, tougher. Project it as attacks, even fly." "That sounds like the Force," Jacen said thoughtfully. "The Jedi could do similar things, enhance their bodies, move objects, sense danger. Maybe Kai and the Force are related somehow." "Maybe," Krillin agreed, though he wasn't convinced. The Force felt fundamentally different from Kai. Kai was personal, internal, an expression of individual will and spirit. The Force seemed external, pervasive, something that existed independent of the beings it touched. But they don't work the same way. I can feel the Force. It's like pressure all around me, pushing against my Kai. It's making everything harder, like trying to swim through syrup." "I've got a connection," Kara called out, interrupting the conversation. "Patching through to command now. This might take a few minutes to establish encryption." While they waited, Krillin stood and moved to the small window, looking out at the alien city. Somewhere out there, beyond those buildings, beyond this planet, was Earth. His wife, Android 18, was probably furious with worry. His daughter, Marin, must be scared. And his friends, Goku, would be tearing the universe apart looking for him. "I'm coming home," he whispered to the glass. "I promise." The comm station crackled to life, and a holographic figure materialized above the projector. Krillin turned to see a middle-aged woman with sharp features and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. She wore a simple white robe, but something about her presence commanded respect. "Lieutenant Seun," the woman said crisply, "your emergency transmission was quite cryptic. What's the situation?" Kara straightened to attention. "Senator Mothma, we've encountered something unprecedented. An individual from beyond our galaxy with abilities that exceed anything we've documented. He's already demonstrated power sufficient to engage Imperial forces, and his capacity appears to extend far beyond what we've seen. Mon Mothma's eyes shifted to Krillin, this individual. Krillin stepped into the hologram's view, giving an awkward wave. Hi, I'm Krillin. I'm from Earth, which apparently isn't anywhere near here." Mon Mothma studied him for a long moment. "Lieutenant Sune transmitted preliminary reports of your capabilities during her initial contact. What she described seemed improbable: energy projection without technology, surviving vacuum exposure, combat abilities that make you a one-man army." "I'm really not that impressive," Krillin said modestly. "Back home, I'm actually one of the weaker fighters. There are at least half a dozen people who could beat me easily." The three rebels and Mon Mothma all stared at him. "You're one of the weaker fighters," Tarek repeated incredulously. "You just defeated a dozen bounty hunters without taking a hit." "Yeah, but my friend Goku could have done it in 5 seconds, and Vegeta would have probably just scared them away with his aura." Krillin rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. "I'm being serious. Where I come from, planetary destruction is a legitimate concern during major fights." Mon Mothma's expression didn't change, but Krillin caught the slight widening of her eyes. "I see. And you're stranded here, separated from your home by unknown means." "Something like that. One moment I was on Earth, the next I was falling through the sky on Tatooine. I need to find a way back, but I don't even know where to start." "The rebellion has access to considerable scientific resources," Mon Mothma said carefully, "including scholars who study hyperspace theory, dimensional physics, and force phenomena that standard Imperial science dismisses. If anyone in the galaxy can help you understand what happened and potentially reverse it, they would be allied with us." Krillin caught the unspoken offer in her words. "You want me to help you fight the Empire in exchange for helping me get home?" "I want to offer you an alliance," Mon Mothma corrected. "Lieutenant Sune reports that you've already defended her team from Imperial-aligned forces and bounty hunters. You've demonstrated both capability and moral character. The Alliance fights for freedom, justice, and the restoration of democracy to the galaxy. If those principles align with your own, we would be honored to work with you." Krillin thought about it. On one hand, he didn't want to get involved in a galactic war. He had his own life, his own responsibilities back home. On the other hand, he'd spent his entire life fighting tyrants and protecting the innocent. The Empire sounded like every evil organization he'd ever faced: Frieza's forces, the Red Ribbon Army, Babitti's followers. "I'm not a soldier," he said finally. "I'm a martial artist, a fighter. I protect people because it's the right thing to do, not because someone orders me to." "We don't want a soldier," Mon Mothma replied. "We have soldiers. What we need are heroes willing to stand against darkness when the odds seem impossible. From what I understand, you've spent your life doing exactly that." She had him there. "All right," Krillin agreed. "I'll help where I can, but my priority is getting home, and I won't follow orders that go against my principles." "Fair terms." Mon Mothma's hologram flickered slightly, transmission lag probably. "Lieutenant Sune, bring him to the redemption. General Dodonna will want to debrief him personally, and we have scientists who should examine this. Chi energy he mentioned. If it's truly distinct from the Force, the implications could be revolutionary." "Understood, Senator. We'll depart within the hour." "One more thing." Mon Mothma's expression grew grave. "By now, Imperial intelligence will have analyzed reports from Tatooine and Ord Mantell. They'll know about Krillin, which means the Emperor will know, And if the Emperor knows, Vader will come, Kara finished quietly. Precisely. You need to reach friendly space as quickly as possible. May the Force be with you. The hologram dissolved, leaving the safe house in silence. Krillin looked between the three rebels. Okay, so who's Vader exactly? You all keep mentioning him like he's some kind of boogeyman. Jacen pulled up a datapad and tapped a few commands. A holographic image appeared. A massive figure in black armor, a flowing cape, and a mask that looked like a skull given form. Even as a static image, the figure radiated menace. Darth Vader, Jacen said quietly. Dark Lord of the Sith, Supreme Commander of the Imperial fleet, the Emperor's enforcer and apprentice. They say he's killed more Jedi than anyone else in history. He can sense Force users from systems away and hunt them down without mercy. Krillin studied the image. The armor was intimidating, sure, but he'd faced scarier. Frieza in his final form had been more terrifying. Cell had been more imposing. Majin Buu had been more. Everything. Still, something about Vader's image made him uneasy. He uses the Force, right? This dark side you mentioned. The Sith follow the dark side, Tariq explained. Where Jedi seek peace and harmony with the Force, Sith embrace passion and power. They use anger, hatred, fear, emotions that the Jedi consider dangerous. It makes them incredibly powerful but also unstable, consumed by their own darkness. So he's evil, Krillin simplified. Irredeemably so, Kara confirmed. And if he's coming for you, we need to move, now. They packed quickly, Krillin having nothing to pack except the clothes on his back. Within 30 minutes, they were aboard a different ship. This one, a modified light freighter that looked fast and well-armed. Kara took the pilot's seat with practiced ease. The Redemption is our primary command ship, she explained as they lifted off. It's currently stationed in the Sluice sector, about 2 days' travel from here. We'll need to make a stop at a refueling station in the Sullust system, but after that, it's a straight shot. Krillin settled into the co-pilot's seat, watching as Ord Mantell fell away beneath them. 2 days. In my world, that would be an eternity for a journey. Here, it sounds like a quick trip. Hyperspace makes the galaxy smaller, Kara agreed. Without it, we'd still be confined to single solar systems. With it, you can cross the entire galaxy in a few weeks if you know the right routes. They broke atmosphere and prepared for the jump to hyperspace. As Kara calculated coordinates, Krillin closed his eyes and tried again to meditate, to understand the energy dynamics of this universe. The Force was still there, omnipresent and alien. But as he sat quietly, feeling its flow, he began to notice something interesting. It wasn't completely incompatible with his Kai, more like they were speaking different languages. Both were forms of life energy, but where Kai was focused and personal, the Force was diffuse and universal. Maybe he could learn to work with it instead of against it. Not use the Force. He wasn't sensitive to it in the way Jedi were, but perhaps harmonize his Kai with its presence. Like learning to swim in an ocean instead of fighting the current. Jumping in 3, 2, 1, Kara announced. The stars stretched into lines, and they dove into hyperspace once more. Krillin let himself drift, half meditating, half sleeping, as the ship hurtled through the impossible dimensions between real space. He dreamed of home, of training with Goku on the lookout, of teaching Marin a new technique, her face lighting up with joy when she finally got it right, of 18's rare genuine smile when she thought no one was watching. He'd get back to them somehow. But first, apparently, he had a Dark Lord of the Sith to meet. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, Krillin felt that familiar flutter in his stomach, not fear but anticipation. The same feeling he got before every major fight. "Bring it on," he whispered to the hyperspace tunnel flowing past. "I've faced worse than you, Vader." Somewhere in the depths of space, aboard a massive star destroyer cutting through the void like a dagger, Darth Vader stood before a holographic display. Images from Tatooine and Ord Mantell played in sequence. A figure in orange, moving faster than sensors could track, energy blasts that followed no known technology. A warrior standing in vacuum as if it were air. The Dark Lord's breathing apparatus hissed rhythmically in the silence of his meditation chamber. He could feel something through the Force, something that didn't belong. Not a Force user. The presence was all wrong for that, but something powerful nonetheless. "Interesting," Vader said to the empty chamber, his mechanical voice echoing off metal walls. "What are you, little warrior? And what happens when darkness meets your light?" He turned from the display, his cape sweeping behind him, and strode toward the bridge. Orders would be given, ships would be deployed, and soon enough he would have his answer. The hunt had begun. The redemption wasn't what Krillin expected. When Kara had mentioned a command ship, he'd pictured something sleek and military, like the Capsule Corp ships back home, all clean lines and polished surfaces. Instead, the Alliance flagship was a converted bulk freighter, its hull a patchwork of different metals and hasty repairs. Weapon emplacements had been welded onto hardpoints that clearly weren't designed for them. Fighter craft clung to external docking clamps like remeras on a shark. It looked, frankly, like it was held together by hope and desperation. "Welcome to the rebellion," Kara said dryly, seeing his expression as their shuttle approached. "We work with what we have." The ship might have looked rough, but its interior buzzed with purposeful energy. Rebels of every species hurried through corridors carrying datapads, equipment, and an air of barely controlled chaos. Krillin followed Kara through the organized confusion, drawing stares from everyone they passed. Word had apparently spread about the alien warrior. General Jan Dodona waited for them in the war room, a tall, weathered man with white hair and eyes that had seen too much war. He studied Krillin with the assessing gaze of a career military officer, but there was curiosity there too, not just tactical calculation. "So you're the one causing such a stir," Dodona said, his voice gravelly but warm. Lieutenant Syoon's report made for fascinating reading. Energy projection, supersonic speed, vacuum survival. If I hadn't seen the sensor data myself, I'd have dismissed it as exaggeration. "I get that a lot," Krillin replied, offering a respectful nod. This man reminded him of Master Roshi in some ways, the weight of experience, the quiet authority. "Nice to meet you, General." "The pleasure is mine, though I confess I'm not entirely sure what to make of you." Dodona gestured to a holographic display that flickered to life, showing star charts and ship positions. "Mon Mothma believes you could be a valuable asset. I'm inclined to agree, but I need to understand your capabilities and limitations." "Fair enough," Krillin said. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." Dodona pulled up chair. "Start with this Kai energy you mentioned. How does it work? What are its limits?" For the next hour, Krillin explained as best he could. The concept of Kai, how it could be sensed and manipulated, the training required to master it. He demonstrated small techniques, a controlled burst of energy that made a datapad float, a flash of his aura that set off proximity sensors, a precise strike that dented a metal bulkhead without damaging the wall behind it. Dodona listened intently, occasionally asking probing questions. A medical droid arrived partway through, scanning Krillin with instruments that beeped and whirred in confusion. "Remarkable," the droid reported in a prim mechanical voice. "Subject's cellular structure appears baseline human, yet energy output exceeds any recorded biological specimen. Muscle density is 3 times normal human standard. Bone structure reinforced by unknown process. Metabolic efficiency approaches theoretical maximums." "That's from years of training," Krillin explained. "Breaking my limits over and over. Every time I thought I'd hit my ceiling, I found a way to push further." "And this works for anyone?" Dodonna asked. "Anyone can learn to use Kai?" "In theory, yes. In practice," Krillin shrugged. "It takes decades of dedicated training just to sense Kai, let alone use it effectively. And even then, there's a limit to how far most people can go. Some people are just naturally stronger, better genetics, higher potential. I've had to work twice as hard as my friends just to keep up." He thought of Goku achieving Super Saiyan, of Gohan's hidden power, of Vegeta's relentless drive. Even Piccolo and the other Z-fighters had advantages he could never match. But he'd kept training anyway, because giving up wasn't in his nature. "Still," Dodonna mused, "even a fraction of your ability could make ordinary soldiers significantly more effective. If we could develop a training program—" "It wouldn't work," Krillin interrupted gently. "Not in the time frame of your war. Teaching someone to fly using Kai takes years. Teaching them to fire energy blasts takes even longer. And here, with the Force interfering, it would be even harder. Your people are better off sticking with what they know: blasters, tactics, teamwork." Dodonna looked disappointed but nodded. "A pity. Still, having even one individual with your capabilities could turn the tide in critical situations." He stood, packing to the holographic display. "Which brings me to the uncomfortable question. What happens when you face Darth Vader?" Krillin had been wondering that himself. "Tell me about him. Really tell me. Not the legend, the actual fighter." Dodonna exchanged glances with Kara, who'd remained in the room throughout the debriefing. Finally, he sighed. "Very well. But understand, much of what we know about Vader comes from survivors, and there aren't many of those." The hologram shifted, showing grainy combat footage. A figure in black armor moved through a corridor, lightsaber blazing red. Rebel soldiers fired at him from entrenched positions. The bolts never reached him. They froze in midair or deflected harmlessly, redirected by invisible force. Vader raised one hand and soldiers flew backward, slamming into walls hard enough to leave dents. "He can manipulate the Force with precision we've rarely seen," Dodonna explained. "Telekinesis, Force choke, precognition that lets him anticipate attacks. His lightsaber is deadly, but it's almost secondary to his Force abilities." The footage continued. Vader deflected blaster fire with his lightsaber, the crimson blade moving in precise arcs. Then he thrust his hand forward, and a massive blast door crumpled like paper, revealing terrified rebels behind it. "He's strong," Krillin observed. "But I've fought telekinetics before. There are ways to counter it." "There's more." Dodonna pulled up different footage, this time showing Vader in space, standing on the hull of a damaged fighter. The Dark Lord raised both hands, and Krillin watched in fascination as the Force visibly distorted around him, forming a protective barrier against vacuum. "He survived in space too," Dodonna said quietly. "For limited periods at least. His armor provides life support, but some reports suggest he can sustain himself through the Force alone when necessary." Krillin studied the footage carefully, his martial artist's mind cataloging patterns. Vader's movements were economical, efficient. No wasted motion. The Force techniques followed consistent patterns. He gestured with his hands, focused his attention on specific targets. There were tells, moments of preparation before major Force use. "He's predictable," Krillin said suddenly. Everyone stared at him. "I don't mean weak," Krillin clarified, "but his style, it's formal, practiced. He follows patterns even if they're effective patterns. Watch here," he pointed at the hologram. Before he uses that Force choke, his hand position changes, and when he's about to use telekinesis on multiple targets, he plants his feet differently. Those are tells, habits. Dodonna rewound the footage, studying it with new eyes. "I'll be damned. You're right. We've looked at this footage dozens of times and never noticed." "It's a martial artist thing," Krillin explained. "Master Roshi taught me to read opponents to see the tells that telegraph their next move. Vader's good, really good, but he's not fighting unpredictably. He's using a style, which means it has weaknesses. And you think you can exploit those weaknesses?" Krillin hesitated. "Honestly, I don't know. The Force is still a mystery to me. I can't sense it the way you people can, and that's a massive disadvantage. It's like fighting blind in one eye. But I'm fast enough that if I see an attack coming, I can probably dodge it. And I hit hard enough that if I land a solid blow." He left the implication hanging. "You try to fight him hand to hand," Kara sounded horrified. "Krillin, his lightsaber would cut through you like." "Would it though?" Krillin held up his hand, golden aura flickering around it. "Kai reinforcement makes my body way tougher than normal. I've taken hits from beings that could shatter planets. A lightsaber is dangerous, sure, but it's just superheated plasma in a containment field. I've been hit by worse." The medical droid beeped urgently. "Inadvisable. Lightsaber temperature exceeds 20,000 degrees. No biological tissue can withstand." "My biological tissue isn't normal," Krillin interrupted. "Trust me, I've tested my limits, though I'd rather not test them against Vader if I can avoid it." He turned back to Dodonna. "Look, I'm not eager to fight him, but if it comes down to it, I won't back down either. That's not who I am." Dodonna studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I believe you, and that brings me to a difficult request." He manipulated the holographic controls, and the display shifted to show a planet green and blue with white clouds swirling across its surface. Dantooine, remote agricultural world, supposedly beneath the Empire's notice. We've established a small base there, nothing critical, but 3 days ago we lost contact. Krillin felt his stomach sink. He knew where this was going. Standard protocol would be to assume the base was compromised and abandon it, Dodonna continued. But we have intelligence suggesting Vader himself is en route to Dantooine, which means he's not going there to destroy an empty base. He's going there because he knows we'll send someone to investigate. He's setting a trap. "A trap for me," Krillin said flatly. "We believe so. Imperial intelligence works quickly, and by now they've connected you to the rebellion. Vader knows we'll want to keep you safe, which means we might send you somewhere remote. Dantooine would be an obvious choice." Dodonna's expression was pained. "I won't order you to go, but if there are rebels still alive on that base, they're bait. And if you don't take that bait..." He didn't need to finish. Krillin understood the cold mathematics of war. Vader would torture or kill those rebels to lure the rebellion's new asset into a confrontation. The only way to save them was to spring the trap. "How many people are we talking about?" Krillin asked. The base had a complement of 47, mostly support staff, a few soldiers. No one who could stand against Vader. 47 people. Krillin thought of all the times he'd rushed into danger to save people he didn't know, against the Saiyans, against Frieza, against every threat that came to Earth. It was who he was, the guy who showed up when people needed help, even when he was outmatched. "I'll go," he said simply. "Krillin, you don't have to," Kara started. "Yeah, I do," he met her eyes. "Where I come from, we have a saying, those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. Master Kakashi taught me that. If there's even a chance those people are alive, I have to try." Dadana's weathered face showed respect mixed with concern. "You understand this is likely a one-way trip. If Vader is there in person, even with your abilities." "I've had a lot of one-way trips," Krillin replied with a slight smile. "I usually find a way back." He paused, then added more seriously, "But if something happens to me, someone needs to find a way to contact Earth. Tell them what happened. My wife, her name is Android 18, and my daughter, Marin, they need to know I died trying to save people, not just lost somewhere." The room fell silent. Even the medical droid stopped its incessant beeping. "I'll make sure of it," Dadana promised, "though I hope it won't come to that." "Me too." Krillin cracked his knuckles, feeling that familiar pre-battle energy building. "So when do we leave?" "Immediately. We've prepared a stealth shuttle with a small team." "No team," Krillin interrupted. "This is a trap for me specifically. Anyone else going is just more targets for Vader. I'll go alone." "That's suicide," Jocelyn protested. He'd been quiet until now, standing by the door, but the objection burst out of him. "You can't take on Vader by yourself." "Actually, that's exactly what I have to do." Krillin's voice was gentle but firm. "Look, I appreciate the concern, but I work better alone in situations like this. No one to worry about, no one to protect, just me and the mission." It wasn't entirely true. He'd always fought alongside the Z-Fighters, but those were people who could keep up with him. These rebels, brave as they were, would be liabilities in a fight against someone like Vader. Dadana considered this, then nodded reluctantly. "Very well, but the shuttle will have a remote pilot AI capable of emergency extraction. If things go south, you activate the beacon and get to the extraction point." "Understood." "Understood." Within the hour, Krillin found himself aboard a sleek, black shuttle designed for stealth operations. The cockpit was cramped but functional, packed with sensors and countermeasures he didn't understand. The ship's AI introduced itself in a pleasant female voice as Pilot 7 and assured him the flight to Tatooine would take approximately 8 hours. Kara appeared at the shuttle ramp just before departure, carrying a bundle. "Thought you might want these," she said, handing him a set of armor pieces, light, flexible, designed for mobility. Krillin examined them and shook his head. "Thanks, but armor would just slow me down. I'm used to fighting in this." He gestured at his torn and sand-stained gi. "At least take this." She pressed a small device into his hand, a communicator. "Keep it on you. If you need help, call. We might not be able to get there in time, but it's better than nothing," Krillin finished. He clipped the communicator to his belt. "Thanks, Kara, for everything. You didn't have to help me back on Tatooine." "Sure I did. You saved my life." She smiled slightly. "Besides, something tells me you're going to change this galaxy, Krillin, one way or another." "Let's hope it's in a good way," he replied. The shuttle ramp closed, sealing him inside. Through the viewport, he watched the Redemption's hangar bay cycle, then felt the gentle push as the ship launched into space. Tatooine appeared on the navigation display, a green marble floating in the black. 8 hours, time to prepare. Krillin settled into the pilot's seat and closed his eyes, sinking into deep meditation. He could feel his Kai more clearly now after days in this universe. His body was adapting, learning to function in the force-saturated environment. It was still harder than home, still required more concentration, but he was getting better at it. He visualized the fight to come. Vader with his lightsaber, with his force powers, with his decades of experience. Krillin with his speed, his Kai techniques, his lifetime of martial arts mastery. It wasn't a fair fight, but then again, few of his fights ever were. The key would be unpredictability. Vader had probably studied what footage existed of Krillin's abilities, would have developed counters and strategies, but he wouldn't know everything, couldn't know everything. The Destructo Disc, the solar flare, the advanced techniques Krillin had developed over years of training, those would be surprises. And surprise, Master Roshi always said, was the best weapon a weaker fighter had against a stronger opponent. Approaching Tatooine system, Pilot 7 announced, breaking his meditation, initiating stealth protocols, scanning for Imperial presence. Krillin opened his eyes and leaned forward, studying the sensor display. The planet looked peaceful enough, no massive fleet presence, no obvious military activity. But that didn't mean anything. Vader could be down there with a single ship, a small contingent, quality over quantity. Detecting one Imperial vessel in orbit, the AI reported. Signature matches Lambda-class shuttle. Small crew complement, likely command personnel. That's Vader's ship, Krillin said with certainty. Of course the Dark Lord would arrive first, would set the stage personally. Can you land without being detected? Affirmative. I can utilize the planet's magnetic poles to mask our approach. Recommended landing zone is 40 kilometers from the rebel base coordinates. Do it. The shuttle descended through Tatooine's atmosphere, weaving between sensor sweeps with programmed precision. Krillin watched the landscape unfold below, endless grasslands, occasional forests, the glint of rivers catching sunlight. It reminded him a bit of the countryside around Master Roshi's island, peaceful and unspoiled. A terrible place for a battle. The shuttle touched down in a clearing surrounded by tall grasses that swayed in the wind. Krillin stood, rolling his shoulders, feeling his muscles loosen and ready themselves. This was it, the moment he'd been unconsciously preparing for since arriving in this galaxy. Krillin, Pilot 7's voice said softly. Probability models suggest 73% chance of your termination if you proceed. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Noted, Krillin replied, moving to the ramp. But those 47 people don't have the option to withdraw. Keep the engines warm. I'll be back. I certainly hope so. Good luck. The ramp lowered and Krillin stepped out onto alien soil. The air was clean, crisp, carrying the scent of grass and earth. So similar to home, yet impossibly far away. He stretched, feeling his Kai flow through his body, golden aura flickering briefly to life before he suppressed it. No point announcing his presence. Not yet. 40 kilometers to the base. For someone who could fly at supersonic speeds, that was less than 2 minutes. But Krillin didn't launch into the air. Instead, he started walking, his enhanced senses spreading out, searching for any sign of life, any hint of danger. The force pressed against him from all directions, heavier here somehow. Or maybe it wasn't the force, maybe it was something else. A presence, vast and dark, waiting at the heart of the grasslands. Vader knew he was here. Krillin could feel it, that certainty that came from years of fighting powerful opponents. The Dark Lord was waiting, patient as a spider in its web. "All right then," Krillin murmured to the wind. "Let's not keep him waiting." He lifted into the air, golden aura blazing to life, and shot toward the base like a missile. The grasslands blurred beneath him, the landscape rushing past at speeds that would have been invisible to normal eyes. In the distance, he could see structures, prefabricated buildings clustered together, surrounded by defensive walls that had been breached. Scorch marks suggested blaster fire. Bodies, both rebel and Imperial, lay scattered across the compound. And in the center of it all, standing perfectly still in the middle of the courtyard, stood a figure in black. Darth Vader had been waiting for him. Krillin descended slowly, deliberately, touching down 50 meters from the Dark Lord. His aura faded but remained ready to flare at a moment's notice. The two warriors studied each other across the killing ground. Vader spoke first, his mechanical voice carrying easily across the distance. "So, the anomaly reveals itself." He tilted his head slightly. And Krillin got the impression he was being studied like a specimen under glass. "You are not of this galaxy, not of the Force, yet you command power that defies explanation." "And you must be Vader," Krillin replied, keeping his voice steady despite the racing of his heart. "The rebels told me about you, Dark Lord of the Sith, the Emperor's attack dog, murderer of children." He saw Vader's hand clench slightly. A tell. The mention of murdered children had struck a nerve. "You know nothing of what you speak," Vader said, his voice cold as the void. "But you will. Before you die, you will understand the power of the dark side. You will beg for mercy that will not come." "Yeah, I've heard that before." Krillin dropped into his fighting stance, feet spread, knees bent, hands raised and ready. Usually from people who ended up eating their words or eating dirt, sometimes both. Vader's lightsaber ignited with a snap hiss, the crimson blade humming with barely contained energy. "Your confidence is admirable, misplaced but admirable. I will enjoy breaking it." The Force surged around Vader like a gathering storm. Krillin felt the pressure increase, felt the dark side's malevolent presence bearing down on him like a physical weight. And then Vader moved. The Dark Lord exploded forward with Force-enhanced speed, lightsaber sweeping in a killing arc toward Krillin's neck. But the warrior from Earth was already gone, his own speed far surpassing what even the Force could grant. Krillin appeared behind Vader, driving a Kai-enhanced punch toward the Dark Lord's spine. Vader spun impossibly fast, bringing his lightsaber up in a defensive position. The glowing blade intercepted Krillin's fist, and Krillin's Kai-shielded hand deflected the lightsaber. Both fighters froze for a microsecond, equally surprised. Then they exploded apart, each reassessing the other. Vader stared at his lightsaber as if it had betrayed him. Impossible. Nothing deflects a lightsaber blade. Krillin examined his knuckles, which were unmarked despite brief contact with 20,000-degree plasma. "Where I come from, I've caught energy blasts that could vaporize planets. Your fancy sword is impressive, but it's not that special." The Dark Lord's mechanical breathing increased in tempo, a sign of agitation, perhaps even anger. "Then I shall simply have to hit you harder." Vader raised his hand, and Krillin felt the Force grip him like a vice, trying to crush the air from his lungs, to squeeze his organs until they burst. It was telekinesis, pure and simple, but backed by decades of mastery and fueled by hatred. Krillin flexed his Kai, his aura exploding outward in a sphere of golden energy. The Force grip shattered like glass, unable to contain the raw power of his life force. "My turn," Krillin said. He cupped his hands at his side, energy crackling between his palms. Ka-emi. Vader's eyes, hidden behind that mask, must have widened as he sensed the building energy. The Dark Lord thrust both hands forward, drawing on the Force to create a barrier. Ha-emi-ta. The blue-white Kamehameha wave erupted from Krillin's hands, a column of pure Kai that screamed across the courtyard. It struck Vader's Force barrier, and the two energies collided in a spectacular display of light and sound. For 3 heartbeats, they were locked in a contest of pure power, Kai versus Force, Krillin's lifetime of training against Vader's mastery of the dark side. Then the barrier shattered, and the Kamehameha wave struck Vader full force. The Dark Lord flew backward, crashing through the remains of a prefabricated building, debris exploding around him. He tumbled across the ground, servos sparking, armor scorched and dented. Krillin didn't press the advantage. He'd learned long ago that the most dangerous enemy was a wounded one. Instead, he waited, watching as Vader slowly rose to his feet. The Dark Lord's breathing was ragged now, damaged respirators struggling to function. But when he raised his head, Krillin could feel the hatred radiating from him like heat from a furnace. "You are strong," Vader acknowledged, his voice distorted by equipment damage. "Stronger than I anticipated, but strength alone is not enough. The dark side grants powers beyond your comprehension." Vader raised both hands to the sky, and Krillin felt the Force gather in ways he'd never experienced. The very air grew heavy. Dark clouds boiled overhead, summoned from nowhere. Lightning began to arc between them, purple, white, and violent. "Oh no," Krillin breathed, recognizing the setup. "You've got to be kidding me." Vader brought his hands down, and Force lightning erupted from his fingertips, not the controlled bolts of a skilled practitioner, but a raging storm of electrical fury born from pure hatred and pain. The lightning struck Krillin before he could dodge, and for the first time since arriving in this galaxy, he screamed. The pain was unlike anything Krillin had experienced in years. Force lightning wasn't just electricity, it was agony given form, channeled through the dark side of the Force. It didn't just attack the body, it attacked the spirit, the will, the very essence of a person's being. Every nerve in Krillin's body screamed as purple-white energy coursed through him, seeking to break him from the inside out. But Krillin had been broken before, and he'd always put himself back together. Through the haze of pain, his training kicked in. Master Roshi's voice echoed in his mind. "Pain is just another obstacle, Krillin, and obstacles are meant to be overcome." He'd survived Cell's attacks. He'd endured Frieza's cruelty. He'd been killed and resurrected multiple times. This was just another trial. His Kai responded to his will, forming a protective shell around his body. The golden aura flared back to life, pushing against the lightning, creating a barrier between the dark side energy and his vulnerable flesh. It wasn't perfect. Some of the lightning still got through, sending jolts of agony through his nervous system, but it was enough. Krillin planted his feet, refusing to fall, refusing to give Vader the satisfaction of seeing him crumble. Through vision blurred by pain and electrical discharge, he could see the Dark Lord standing with arms outstretched, pouring hatred and power into the assault. "Is that all you've got?" Krillin gasped through gritted teeth. Vader's only response was to increase the intensity. The lightning doubled, then tripled, the courtyard lighting up like a miniature sun. The ground beneath Krillin's feet began to crack and blacken from the overflow of energy. But something strange was happening. As Krillin's Kai pushed back against the Force lightning, the two energies began to interact in unexpected ways. His life force, his personal power cultivated through decades of training, was learning to recognize the patterns in Vader's attack. Not to use the Force, Krillin couldn't do that, but to understand it, to predict it. The Force and Kai were different languages, yes, but languages could be translated. Krillin took a step forward, then another, walking directly into the storm of lightning, his golden aura growing brighter with each step. Vader's mechanical breathing hitched, a sound of surprise, perhaps even fear. "I've been hit by gods," Krillin said, his voice carrying over the crackling energy. "I've taken attacks that could shatter worlds. Your lightning hurts, I'll give you that, but it won't stop me." He thrust his hands forward, and twin beams of concentrated Kai shot from his palms, piercing through the Force lightning like arrows through rain. The beams struck Vader's chest, and the Dark Lord staggered backward, his lightning attack faltering. Krillin didn't hesitate. The moment the lightning stopped, he vanished. Vader spun, lightsaber raised, sensing movement through the Force. But Krillin was already there, inside the Dark Lord's guard, moving faster than Force precognition could track. A punch to the midsection, Vader's armor crumpled under the impact. An elbow to the helmet, the mask cracked, systems sparking. A sweep to the legs, Vader's Force-enhanced balance meant nothing against pure physical speed and technique. The Dark Lord hit the ground hard, his lightsaber flying from his grip. Krillin caught it in midair, studying the weapon with curiosity. The blade hummed in his hand, responding to his grip even though he had no connection to the Force. "Interesting design," Krillin observed, holding the crimson blade up to examine it. "Elegant, like Kara said, but still just a tool." He deactivated the lightsaber and tossed it aside. "I'm not going to kill you with your own weapon. That's not my style." Vader rose slowly to his feet, one hand pressed against his damaged chest plate. His breathing was labored, the respirator struggling. "You fight with honor, a Jedi trait." "I'm not a Jedi. I'm not anything from your galaxy." Krillin's aura faded slightly, though he remained ready for another attack. "I'm just a guy trying to get home, and you're in my way." "Then you have already failed," Vader rasped. "There is no return for you. This galaxy is your prison now, and I am your executioner." The Dark Lord raised both hands, and Krillin felt something enormous gathering in the Force. Not lightning this time, something bigger, more fundamental. The very air began to warp and twist around Vader as he drew on reserves of dark side power that made his previous attacks look like warm-ups. "I was holding back," Vader said, his mechanical voice carrying an edge of terrible promise. "Testing you, learning your capabilities, but now I understand what you are, a threat that must be eliminated at any cost." The Force exploded outward from Vader in a concussive wave that shattered every remaining structure in the base. Krillin braced himself, Kai's shield flaring to maximum, but the sheer power behind the attack still sent him skidding backward across the courtyard, boots carving trenches in the dirt. When the dust settled, Vader stood in a crater of his own making, his damaged armor crackling with dark side energy. His respirator had failed completely. Krillin could hear wet, rasping breaths as the Dark Lord sustained himself through the Force alone. "You wanted to see my full power." Vader's voice was no longer mechanical, but organic, damaged, scarred, but human. "Very well. Witness what the dark side truly offers to those willing to embrace it." Vader's hands clenched into fists, and every piece of debris in the ruined base, chunks of ferrocrete, twisted metal, broken weapons, even the bodies of the fallen, lifted into the air. Dozens of objects, hundreds, all suspended by telekinetic might that defied comprehension. "Oh, come on," Krillin muttered. "That's just showing off." Vader thrust his hands forward, and the debris cloud became a storm of projectiles, each one accelerated to lethal velocity by the Force. They came from every direction simultaneously, a three-dimensional barrage impossible to dodge. Krillin's response was instinctive, solar flare. He brought his hands to his face, and brilliant white light exploded from his body, not an attack, but a technique designed to blind opponents. In the Dragon Ball universe, it worked on nearly everyone. Here, against someone who relied partly on the Force and partly on optical sensors. Vader's damaged helmet shrieked as its visual systems overloaded. The Dark Lord staggered, his concentration broken, and the debris storm faltered. Objects fell from the air, crashing harmlessly around him as his telekinetic grip failed. But Vader was no ordinary opponent. Even blinded, even damaged, he was dangerous. He swung his arms in wide arcs, using the Force to create barriers and attack zones, trying to trap Krillin in a net of invisible power. Krillin weaved through the Force attacks like water through rocks, his enhanced speed and combat instincts letting him predict where the dangers were even if he couldn't see them directly. He closed the distance to Vader, ducking under a Force push, sidestepping a desperate telekinetic grab. When he was close enough, he spoke quietly. "I don't want to kill you, Vader, but I will stop you." His hand shot forward in a precision strike, the same technique he'd used countless times in tournament matches and real battles. A nerve strike to the side of Vader's neck, calculated to induce temporary paralysis without permanent damage. His fingers connected with flesh through a gap in the damaged armor, and Vader's body seized up, cybernetic systems momentarily overwhelmed by the precisely targeted impact. The Dark Lord crumpled, conscious but unable to move. Krillin stood over him, breathing hard. The fight had taken more out of him than he'd expected. His Kai reserves were depleted in ways they never would have been back home, the Force-saturated environment making every technique cost twice as much energy. "Stay down," Krillin advised. "I hit the nerve cluster that controls your voluntary movement. You'll recover in about 10 minutes, but by then I'll be long gone." He turned to walk away, intending to search the base for survivors, when Vader's voice stopped him. "You are a fool." The Dark Lord's words were strained, forced through paralyzed vocal cords. "You could kill me, end the Emperor's greatest weapon, yet you show mercy." "Yeah, well, that's kind of my thing." Krillin looked back over his shoulder. "Where I come from, we believe people can change, can be redeemed. Even the worst villains sometimes turn out to have good in them." He paused. "Besides, you're not the real threat. This Emperor of yours, Palpatine, he's the one pulling the strings. You're just another victim. You know nothing." "Maybe not, but I know what it looks like when someone's being used, when someone's had their choices taken away." Krillin's voice softened. "There's still good in you. I can feel it. Not through the Force, I don't have that ability, but through experience. I've known too many people who thought they were beyond saving and they were wrong." He thought of Piccolo, who'd been raised to conquer Earth but became one of its greatest defenders. Of Vegeta, who'd committed genocide but found redemption through family and pride. Even of Android 18, a being created to kill Goku, who'd become Krillin's wife and the mother of his child. "Think about what I said," Krillin told the paralyzed Dark Lord. "You've got about 8 minutes before you can move again. Use them wisely." He left Vader lying in the ruined courtyard and moved through the base, searching for survivors with his Kai senses. The bodies he'd seen earlier were a mix of rebels and Imperial stormtroopers, casualties of the initial assault, probably. But his enhanced hearing picked up something else. Heartbeats, shallow breathing, coming from beneath one of the collapsed structures. Krillin flew to the location and began moving debris with careful precision, his strength making quick work of the ferrocrete and metal. Within minutes, he'd uncovered a hidden bunker entrance. Inside, he found them, 23 rebels huddled together in the darkness. They were injured, terrified, but alive. When they saw Krillin descend through the opening he'd created, silhouetted against the sky, several gasped. "It's okay," Krillin said quickly, his voice gentle. "I'm with the Alliance. Cara Sune sent me. You're safe now." A woman, a lieutenant by her insignia, though her uniform was torn and bloody, stepped forward. You're the one from the reports, the warrior from beyond the stars." "That's me. Can everyone walk? We need to evacuate immediately. I took down Vader, but he won't stay down forever, and there might be more Imperials on the way." "Vader," the lieutenant's eyes widened. "You fought Darth Vader and survived." "Fought him and won, actually, though I don't recommend trying it at home." Krillin helped an injured rebel to his feet, supporting the man's weight effortlessly. "Come on, everyone. My shuttle's about 40 clicks north. We'll be cramped, but we'll fit." The evacuation took precious minutes. Krillin made 2 trips, carrying groups of injured rebels at supersonic speed to the shuttle's location. Pilot 7's sensors detected his approach each time, and the AI's voice carried relief. "I'm detecting 23 additional life forms," the AI reported. "This shuttle is rated for a maximum of 12 passengers." "We'll make it work," Krillin said firmly, helping the last group aboard. Bodies pressed together in the cargo hold, but everyone was accounted for. "Just get us off this planet before Vader recovers." "Understood. Initiating launch sequence." The shuttle lifted off, engines screaming as it climbed toward orbit. Through the viewport, Krillin could see the ruined rebel base shrinking beneath them, and in the center of the courtyard, a black-armored figure rising to his feet. Vader stood, watching the shuttle ascend, making no move to pursue. Perhaps he couldn't. His ship was on the other side of the planet, and his injuries needed treatment. Or perhaps he simply chose not to, the encounter having given him much to consider. Either way, the Dark Lord let them go. As Tatooine fell away beneath them and the stars beckoned ahead, Krillin finally allowed himself to relax. The adrenaline drained from his system, replaced by bone-deep exhaustion. He'd won the fight, saved the rebels, and survived an encounter with one of the galaxy's most feared warriors. But he'd also learned something troubling. His power was limited here. The Force interfered with his Kai in ways that made every technique harder, every battle more draining. If he'd been at full strength, the strength he commanded back on Earth, the fight with Vader would have been over in seconds. Instead, it had pushed him to his limits. He needed to adapt, to learn, to find a way to harmonize his energy with this universe's fundamental forces, or he'd eventually face something he couldn't overcome. "Incoming transmission," Pilot 7 announced. "From the Redemption, General Dodonna is requesting immediate status update." "Put him through," Krillin said. Dodonna's holographic form materialized in the cramped cockpit. "Krillin, thank the Force. We picked up massive energy signatures from Tatooine. What happened?" "I found the survivors, 23 of them, and I ran into Vader." Krillin paused for effect. "We fought. I won. He's still alive, but I don't think he'll be pursuing us anytime soon." The cockpit fell silent except for the humming of the ship's engines. Even the injured rebels stopped their quiet conversations, straining to hear. "You fought Darth Vader," Dodonna said slowly. "One of the most powerful Force users in the galaxy, and you won." "Yeah, but it was closer than I'd like. This Force thing really messes with my energy. Back home, that fight would have been easy. Here," Krillin shook his head, "I need to get stronger or smarter, probably both." "Nevertheless, this is unprecedented. Vader has never been defeated in single combat. Never." Dodonna's expression shifted to something like hope. "The implications are staggering. If word spreads that Vader can be beaten, then every Force user and wannabe hero in the galaxy will try to challenge him, and most of them will die," Krillin interrupted. "Don't spread this around, General. I won because I had advantages Vader didn't expect. Speed he couldn't track, power he couldn't comprehend. Someone else trying the same thing will just get killed." "A wise perspective," Dodonna acknowledged. "Still, you've proven that Vader isn't invincible. That alone is valuable intelligence." He paused. "Return to the Redemption. We'll debrief properly, and I have someone I'd like you to meet. A scientist who specializes in dimensional theory. She might be able to help you understand what happened to you and how to reverse it." Krillin's heart leaped. "Really? Someone who might know how to get me home?" "No promises, but Dr. Sala is brilliant, and she's been studying reports of Force-related dimensional anomalies for years. If anyone can help, it's her." For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, Krillin felt genuine hope. Not just the possibility of survival or helping the rebels, but actual hope of returning to Earth, to his family, to his life. "We'll be there as fast as this shuttle can manage," he promised. The transmission ended, and Krillin settled back in his seat, watching the stars stream past. Behind him, the rescued rebels were already treating each other's wounds, sharing rations, whispering about the warrior who'd fought Darth Vader and lived to tell the tale. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired, drained, and desperately homesick. But he'd done what needed to be done. Saved lives, made a difference. Just like always. Meanwhile, aboard his damaged Lambda-class shuttle, Darth Vader sat in his meditation chamber, back to tubes already repairing the worst of his injuries. His helmet had been removed, revealing the scarred, pale face beneath. A face that rarely saw light, that existed in constant pain. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the thoughts churning through his mind. The warrior, Krillin, had defeated him, not through the Force, but through sheer physical prowess and techniques that seemed to violate every law of physics Vader understood. More disturbing was the ease with which the little warrior had done it, the casual competence that suggested he'd fought far worse opponents and survived. But what truly unsettled Vader were Krillin's final words. "There's still good in you." No one had spoken to him like that in decades. Not since Padme. The name brought a surge of pain that had nothing to do with his damaged body. His wife, dead by his own hand, or so the Emperor had told him. The last person who'd believed he could be something other than a monster. And now this stranger from beyond the stars, this impossibly powerful warrior, had looked at the galaxy's most feared enforcer and seen not a monster, but a victim. "Foolishness," Vader told the empty chamber, his voice raw without the respirator's mechanical filter. "Sentiment, weakness." But deep in his chest, in the part of him that had once been Anakin Skywalker, something stirred. A tiny ember of doubt, no larger than a spark, but present nonetheless. Could he change? Could someone so deep in darkness find their way back to the light? The thought was treason. The Emperor would destroy him if he even suspected such weakness. And yet, Vader's scarred hand clenched into a fist. "No," he said firmly. "The dark side is power, everything else is lies." But even as he spoke the words, that tiny ember refused to die. Krillin had planted a seed of doubt, and seeds, if given time and the right conditions, could grow into something dangerous. Or something redemptive. Only time would tell which. The Redemption's hangar bay erupted in cheers when Pilot 7's shuttle touched down. The rescued rebels were greeted by medical teams and tearful comrades who'd assumed them dead. Krillin watched from the shuttle's ramp as families reunited, as friends embraced, as hope rekindled in eyes that had been dark with grief. This was why he fought, not for glory or recognition, but for moments like this, for the simple joy of lives saved and families made whole. Kara pushed through the crowd, her face breaking into a genuine smile when she saw him. "You actually did it. You went up against Vader and brought everyone back." "Not everyone," Krillin said quietly, thinking of the bodies he'd found in the ruined base. 24 people died before I got there. And 23 lived because you did." Kara gripped his shoulder. "Don't diminish that, Krillin. In this war, we take our victories where we can get them." General Dodonna appeared, flanked by a woman Krillin didn't recognize, tall, with silver hair and eyes that sparkled with fierce intelligence. She studied Krillin like he was a particularly interesting equation. "Dr. Sala, I presume?" Krillin asked. "Guilty as charged." She extended a hand which Krillin shook. Her grip was firm, confident. "I've been analyzing the censored data from your various exhibitions. Fascinating doesn't begin to cover it. You're a walking violation of several fundamental laws of physics." "I get that a lot." "I'll bet. Come with me, I've set up a lab in Section 7. I want to run some tests, take some readings, maybe figure out how a being from another universe ended up in ours." She paused. "And more importantly, how we might send you back." Those words were music to Krillin's ears. "Lead the way, Doc." As they walked through the Redemption's corridors, Krillin couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed. He'd fought Vader and won. He'd proven that the Empire's greatest weapon wasn't invincible. Word would spread. It always did. And when it did, the galaxy would know that hope existed even in the darkest places. But more than that, he'd planted seeds of doubt in Vader himself. Whether those seeds would grow or wither, Krillin couldn't say. But he'd learned long ago that even the smallest spark of light could illuminate the deepest darkness. If you'd asked him a week ago whether he'd end up in another universe fighting Dark Lords and inspiring rebellions, he'd have laughed. But life had a way of throwing curveballs, and Krillin had spent his entire existence learning to hit them back. Dr. Sala's lab was a chaotic mess of equipment, holographic displays, and calculations scrawled on every available surface. She immediately began setting up sensors around Krillin, muttering to herself in technical jargon he couldn't follow. "All right, let's start with the basics," she said, activating a scanner. "Show me this Kai energy you keep talking about. Nothing explosive, just a gentle demonstration." Krillin held out his hand and allowed golden energy to flow into his palm, a sphere of controlled power that hummed with life force. The scanner went berserk, readouts spiking into ranges that made Dr. Sala's eyes widen. "Incredible," she breathed. "It's not force energy. The signature is completely different, but it interacts with the force in ways I've never seen. It's like like two electromagnetic fields with the same polarity, pushing against each other but also creating harmonics where they overlap. Can you use that to figure out how I got here? Krillin asked hopefully. Maybe, probably. It'll take time. She circled him, scanners humming. The dimensional barrier between universes is supposed to be absolute. Breaking through requires energy output equivalent to a supernova plus precise manipulation of space-time that we simply don't have the technology for. But your energy, this Kai, it has properties that might allow for natural dimensional rifting under the right conditions. Natural dimensional rifting, Krillin repeated. What does that mean? It means, Dr. Sala said, her excitement building, that you might not have been pulled here by external force. You might have accidentally created a rift yourself. If your energy was fluctuating at the exact wrong or right moment, and if there was some kind of external catalyst. The wish, Krillin said suddenly. Someone made a wish to Shenron right before I got pulled here. I heard them say it, but I couldn't make out the words. Shenron, Dr. Sala's fingers flew across her datapad. What's that? A wish-granting dragon. We summon him by gathering 7 magic balls called Dragon Balls. He can grant pretty much any wish within his power. Resurrect the dead, restore planets, stuff like that. Dr. Sala stared at him for a long moment. You're serious? Completely. I've used them myself a dozen times. Died and got wished back. Had my body restored after Cell blew me up. All sorts of things. A wish-granting entity with reality-altering capabilities, combined with your unique energy signature, potentially interacting with a force anomaly. Dr. Sala was practically vibrating with excitement now. That could do it. That could absolutely create a dimensional rift, if we can recreate the conditions. Can you? Krillin interrupted, hope surging in his chest. She deflated slightly. I don't know. Without access to this Shenron entity, without understanding the exact nature of the wish made, without knowing what force phenomena might have been present at that specific moment, she shook her head. I can't promise anything, Krillin, but I can promise I'll try. It wasn't the answer he'd hoped for, but it was something. More than he'd had an hour ago. Thank you, he said sincerely. Even if you can't send me back, at least knowing there's a chance. There's always a chance, Dr. Sala said firmly. Now let's get to work. I want to understand every aspect of your energy. The more data I have, the better chance we have of solving this puzzle. For the next several hours, Krillin demonstrated techniques, allowed himself to be scanned and measured, and answered what felt like 1,000 questions about Earth, Kai, and the Dragon Balls. Dr. Sala was relentless, her scientific curiosity driving her to probe every detail. Finally, exhausted both physically and mentally, Krillin called it quits. Doc, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but I really need to sleep. It's been a very long day. Of course. She barely looked up from her calculations. Quarters have been assigned to you on Deck 4. Get some rest. We'll continue tomorrow. Kara was waiting outside the lab to escort him to his quarters. As they walked, she glanced at him sideways. So, any progress? Maybe. She thinks the dimensional rift might have been caused by a wish made on Earth, combined with my Kai energy. If she can figure out the exact conditions, she might be able to recreate it. That's good news, right? It's hope, Krillin corrected, which is more than I had before. They reached his quarters, a small but functional space with a bunk, a desk, and a viewport showing the stars beyond. It reminded him of the sparse rooms at Kame House where he'd trained as a child. Get some rest, Kara advised. Tomorrow, General Dodona wants to discuss your role in the rebellion. If you're going to be here for a while, we might as well make use of your abilities." "I'm not a soldier," Krillin reminded her. "No, you're something better, a hero who fights because it's right, not because someone ordered you to," she smiled. "The rebellion could use more of those." After she left, Krillin collapsed onto the bunk, staring at the ceiling. His body ached in ways it hadn't in years. The Force-Sky incompatibility was taking a real toll. Every fight, every technique cost him more than it should. But he'd faced worse, and he'd keep facing whatever came because that's what Z-Fighters did. They protected people. They stood against evil. They never gave up, no matter how impossible the odds. "I'm coming home," he whispered to the stars beyond the viewport. 18, Marin, everyone, I promise I'm coming home. I just need to save a galaxy first." And with that thought, exhaustion finally claimed him, pulling him into dreamless sleep. Outside the ship, the stars wheeled on their eternal paths, indifferent to the struggles of those who sailed between them. But somewhere in that vast darkness, forces were already moving in response to Krillin's presence. The Emperor had been informed of Vader's defeat. The Empire scientists were analyzing every scrap of data on the anomalous warrior. Bounty hunters were calculating whether the reward was worth the risk. And on distant worlds, in hidden temples and forgotten ruins, ancient Force users stirred, sensing a presence that didn't belong, a power that defied categorization. The galaxy was about to change, and Krillin, whether he wanted to or not, was at the center of that change. 3 weeks passed aboard the Redemption, and Krillin fell into an unexpected routine. Mornings were spent with Dr. Sala in the lab, undergoing tests that grew increasingly esoteric. She measured his Kai output under various conditions, studied how his energy interacted with Force-sensitive crystals, and built mathematical models that covered entire walls with equations. Progress was slow but steady. Each day brought new understanding of the dimensional barrier that separated universes. Afternoons found him in the training halls, working with rebel soldiers who'd volunteered to learn what they could from him. Krillin couldn't teach them Kai manipulation, that would take decades, but he could teach combat principles, body mechanics, and the mental discipline required to face overwhelming odds without breaking. "Strength isn't about raw power," he told a group of young rebels during one session. "It's about using what you have efficiently. A smaller fighter can beat a larger one if they're smarter, faster, better trained. I've proven that my entire life." The soldiers ate it up, their skills improving incrementally with each lesson. Krillin found unexpected satisfaction in teaching. It reminded him of training with Marin, of passing on the knowledge that had been given to him by masters long gone. Evenings were his own, usually spent meditating or talking with Kara and the other rebels he'd befriended. They told him about the galaxy, its history, its people, the slow grinding horror of life under the Empire. He told them about Earth, about Goku and the Z-Fighters, about battles against gods and monsters that made their war seem almost mundane in comparison. "Almost," Kara had said pointedly. "But our war is real, happening now, to real people who can't just get wished back to life if they die." She was right, of course. The stakes here were different, more personal somehow, despite the galactic scale. Every rebel who died stayed dead. Every planet enslaved remained in chains. There were no Dragon Balls to fix mistakes, no Senzu beans to heal the wounded, no afterlife where you could train and return stronger. It made the fight feel more desperate, more precious. On the 22nd day, everything changed. Krillin was in the lab with Dr. Sala, who just finished running another series of scans, when alarms began shrieking throughout the ship. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in crimson, and the ship's intercom crackled to life. Battle stations, all hands to battle stations. Imperial fleet detected, 3 Star Destroyers and multiple support craft. This is not a drill. Krillin and Dr. Sala exchanged glances before sprinting for the corridor. Rebels rushed past them, heading to gun emplacements and fighter bays. The organized chaos of a military vessel preparing for combat filled the air. Kara found them near the bridge, her face grim. "They found us. I don't know how, but they found us." "How bad?" Krillin asked. "Bad. 3 Imperial-class Star Destroyers against our 1 modified freighter and escort fighters. We're outgunned 20-1. She was already moving toward the bridge. Dadana's calling an emergency briefing. The bridge was controlled pandemonium. Officers shouted coordinates and tactical data, while holographic displays showed the approaching Imperial fleet. Massive wedge-shaped warships that dwarfed the Redemption like wolves surrounding a wounded deer. General Dadana stood at the command station, his weathered face grave but calm. "Options?" he asked his tactical officer. "Limited, sir. We can't outrun them. They've positioned themselves to cut off all hyperspace vectors. We can't outfight them. Our shields won't last 10 minutes under sustained fire. And we can't surrender. They're not broadcasting demands, just attack patterns." "They're not here to capture," Kara said quietly. "They're here to destroy, to make an example." Krillin studied the holographic display, his mind racing. 3 Star Destroyers. He'd seen them before in footage, but seeing them in tactical overlay brought their true scale into focus. Each one was over a mile long, bristling with weapons, carrying thousands of troops and dozens of fighters. "What if I buy you time?" he said suddenly. Everyone on the bridge turned to stare at him. "What do you mean, buy us time?" Dadana asked carefully. "I mean I go out there and keep them busy while you prepare an escape route. I can survive in vacuum, you've seen the footage. I can move faster than their weapons can track. If I attack their capital ships, draw their attention." "That's suicide," Kara interrupted. "Krillin, you're powerful, but you're 1 person against 3 Star Destroyers. That's thousands of guns, hundreds of fighters, and I've faced worse odds," Krillin said firmly. "Trust me, I know what I can handle." "You fought Vader one-on-one," Dadana pointed out. "This is different. This is sustained combat against overwhelming firepower. Even if you disable 1 ship, the other 2 will concentrate fire. You'll be caught in a crossfire that would vaporize a moon." Krillin met the general's eyes. "Do you have a better plan?" Silence answered him. The tactical officer looked away. Kara opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. Because the truth was simple, they had no better option. This was certain death or probable death, and Krillin was offering to turn the odds slightly less impossible. "I can't order you to do this," Dadana said finally. "You're not even officially part of the Alliance. This isn't your fight." "Maybe not," Krillin agreed. "But these people," he gestured at the rebels rushing through the corridors, "they're fighting for the same things we fought for back home. Freedom, justice, the right to live without tyranny. That makes it my fight." He thought of his daughter, of the world he wanted her to grow up in. Of all the times he'd stood against impossible odds because someone had to. Of the simple truth that had guided him since childhood. When people needed help, you helped them. Period. "Besides," he added with a slight grin, "I could use the workout. 3 weeks of lab tests have made me soft." Despite the tension, several bridge officers chuckled. Kara shook her head, but there was respect in her eyes. "How long do you need?" Krillin asked Dadana. The general consulted with his navigator. 20 minutes to plot a safe hyperspace route around their interdiction field. Another 5 to get everyone aboard and ready to jump. 25 minutes total. "I can give you 30, Krillin promised. He turned toward the hangar bay. "Get everyone ready to go the second I give the signal." "Krillin," Kara grabbed his arm. "Come back. That's an order from a friend, not a superior officer. Come back." "I'll do my best." He gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "I always do." The hangar bay was chaos as fighters scrambled and crew rushed to battle stations. Krillin ignored it all, walking calmly to the main airlock. A technician tried to stop him, shouting something about vacuum protocols and safety equipment. "I don't need it," Krillin said simply, and triggered the airlock manually. The outer door opened, and the void beckoned. Krillin stepped into space. The cold hit him immediately, not painfully, but noticeably. His Kai shield flared to life automatically, creating a bubble of life-sustaining energy around his body. It was harder than it should have been, the Force-Sky incompatibility making the shield cost more energy to maintain, but it was manageable. He'd survived in space before. He could do it again. The 3 Star Destroyers loomed ahead, their wedge-shaped hulls blocking out the stars. Turbolaser batteries were already rotating toward the Redemption, charging their weapons. Fighter squadrons poured from their hangar bays like angry insects. Krillin took a deep breath, unnecessary in vacuum, but the habit was comforting, and flew toward the nearest Star Destroyer. His golden aura blazed to life, a beacon in the darkness. Every sensor on every Imperial ship immediately locked onto him, registering an energy signature that made no sense. No ship, no suit, just a humanoid figure flying through space under its own power. The first turbolaser batteries opened fire. Red energy bolts the size of trucks screamed toward him. Krillin weaved between them, his enhanced reflexes making their targeting computers look sluggish. He accelerated, pushing his speed higher, the stars becoming streaks as he approached the first Star Destroyer at velocities that would have atomized any normal ship. He crashed into the destroyer's shield at Mach 5. The shield held barely. Energy rippled across its surface as it struggled to distribute the kinetic impact. Krillin pulled back, studying the phenomenon with interest, so their shields could stop him if he came in like a battering ram. Time for a different approach. He cupped his hands, energy crackling between his palms. Ka-emi-ha-emi-ha. The Kamehameha wave erupted from his hands, blue-white energy slamming into the Star Destroyer's forward shields. This time, they didn't hold. The beam punched through the shield generator, through the hull plating, through interior bulkheads and corridors, and out the other side of the ship. Alarms shrieked through the destroyer's corridors as atmosphere vented from the massive wound. The ship didn't explode. Star Destroyers were built with redundancy in mind, but it was crippled, listing to starboard as its crew scrambled to contain the damage. 1 down, 2 to go, except Krillin's Kai reserves had just taken a significant hit. That Kamehameha had cost him far more than it should have, the hostile universal energy draining his power faster than expected. He couldn't keep using big techniques, had to be smart about this. The other 2 destroyers had adjusted their tactics. Rather than trying to shoot him, they were launching fighters, dozens of them, TIE fighters that screamed through space in tight formations. And these pilots were good, coordinating their attacks, trying to box him in. Krillin grinned despite the danger. Finally, opponents at his speed level. He dove into the fighter formation, and what followed was less a battle than a dance. Krillin moved between the TIE fighters like water, his hands striking out in precisely controlled blows. He didn't want to kill the pilots. They were just soldiers following orders. So he aimed for engines, for weapon systems, for control surfaces. One TIE lost its starboard panel and spun wildly out of control, pilot ejecting in an emergency pod. Another's engines exploded in a shower of sparks, leaving it drifting helplessly. A third simply fell apart as Krillin's strikes severed critical connections. Within 90 seconds, he disabled 23 fighters without a single casualty. But more kept coming, and while he fought the fighters, the Star Destroyers were repositioning, their massive ion cannons charging. These weapons were designed to disable entire capital ships, and if they hit him, Krillin didn't want to find out. He abandoned the fighter combat and flew directly at the second Star Destroyer, weaving between ion cannon blasts that ionized the space around him. This time he didn't try to breach the shields with brute force. Instead, he flew along the hull, staying under the firing arc of most weapons, until he found what he was looking for, the shield generator dome. His fist, wrapped in golden kai, struck the dome like a meteor. Metal crumpled, circuits exploded. The shield generator overloaded catastrophically, and the destroyer's shields flickered and died. Exposed, vulnerable, the massive ship became a sitting target. But Krillin didn't press the attack. Instead, he flew to where he could see the bridge, a bulbous structure on top of the ship's command tower, and made eye contact with the officers inside. Then he raised his hand, energy crackling around it in clear threat. Surrender or die. The message was obvious. The Star Destroyer's engines powered down. A white flag appeared on its communication channels. Surrender accepted. 2 down without catastrophic casualties, 1 to go. Except the third destroyer had learned from watching its companions fall. It wasn't engaging. Instead, it was retreating, engines pushing it away from the combat zone while its weapons continued firing, not at Krillin, but at the redemption. Krillin's heart froze. He'd been so focused on the immediate threats that he'd forgotten the real target. The destroyer wasn't here to fight him. It was here to destroy the rebel ship. And while he'd been dancing with fighters and disabling shields, it had been lining up the killing shot. The destroyer's main battery fired, 8 heavy turbolasers in perfect synchronization. Krillin moved faster than he'd ever moved in this universe, pushing his kai to the absolute limit despite the hostile environment. He became a streak of golden light, crossing kilometers in heartbeats, placing himself between the energy barrage and the redemption. The turbolaser bolts hit him full force. Pain exploded through his body, not the clean, focused agony of Vader's Force lightning, but the raw, burning torture of superheated plasma designed to punch through capital ship armor. His kai shield held, but just barely, energy crackling and sparking as it fought to dissipate the thermal load. Krillin screamed, not in defeat but in defiance. His aura exploded outward, golden energy surging to maximum output. The turbolaser bolts were deflected, redirected, scattered into space where they could harm nothing. But the effort cost him dearly. His kai reserves, already depleted from sustained combat, dropped to dangerous levels. He couldn't keep this up much longer. Through the pain and exhaustion, Krillin's tactical mind kept working. The third destroyer was too far away to reach quickly, and it had adjusted its firing pattern to target the Redemption while staying out of his immediate range. He could chase it, but by the time he reached it, the rebel ship would be destroyed. He needed to end this now, which meant using the technique he'd been avoiding, the one that always took too much out of him, that left him vulnerable, but that could cut through anything. "Destructo Disc," he whispered. He raised his hand above his head, and golden energy condensed into a spinning disc of razor-sharp Kai. It hummed with barely contained power, edges so fine they could slice through dimensions. Krillin had used this technique to cut through opponents far stronger than himself, through Frieza's tail, through mountains, through energy barriers that should have been impenetrable. He took careful aim at the Star Destroyer's engines, the vulnerable point, the spot where a precise cut would disable without necessarily killing. Then he threw. The Destructo Disc screamed through space, a golden ring of death that made sensor operators' instruments scream in confusion. It covered the distance to the Star Destroyer in seconds, moving too fast for point defense systems to track. And it cut. The disc sliced through the destroyer's engines like they were paper, through reactor shielding, through hyperdrive motivators, through the massive sublight drives that pushed the kilometer-long vessel through space. Precisely, perfectly, exactly where Krillin had aimed it. The engines exploded in a chain reaction of overloading systems and venting plasma. The Star Destroyer lurched, its forward momentum carrying it into a slow, uncontrolled tumble as all power died. Emergency pods began launching, crew abandoning ship, recognizing the catastrophic damage. 3 Star Destroyers, one disabled and surrendered, one crippled and venting atmosphere, one tumbling dead in space with survivors evacuating. Total time elapsed, 18 minutes. Krillin floated in the void, breathing hard despite the vacuum, his golden aura flickering weakly. He'd done it, bought the time the rebellion needed, but his Kai reserves were nearly empty, depleted in ways that would take days to recover back home, and probably weeks here in this Force-saturated universe. His communicator crackled to life, Kara's voice shaking with emotion. "Krillin, Krillin, respond. Are you alive?" "Alive," he confirmed, his own voice weak. "Tired, really, really tired, but alive." "You absolute madman," relief flooded her words. "You just took on 3 Star Destroyers and won. The entire bridge is watching the sensor data and nobody can believe it." "Believe it?" Krillin started flying slowly back toward the Redemption, his movements sluggish compared to his earlier speed. "How's the evacuation coming?" "Complete. We're ready to jump on your signal. Are you? Are you going to make it back in time?" "Yeah, just give me a minute too." The warning came too late, a flash of premonition that Krillin's exhausted mind processed a half-second after it mattered. Something slammed into him from behind and pain erupted across his back. He tumbled through space, his Kai shield flickering dangerously low, and when he stabilized himself, he saw what had hit him. A single TIE fighter, advanced model, all black with red markings, and its pilot was Force-sensitive. Krillin could feel the dark side radiating from the small craft like heat from a furnace. An Inquisitor, one of Vader's Force-using assassins, someone trained specifically to hunt and kill Force-sensitives. And while Krillin wasn't Force-sensitive, the Inquisitor clearly didn't care about technicalities. The TIE's weapons fired again, not standard laser cannons, but some kind of experimental energy weapon that resonated uncomfortably with the Force. The blast caught Krillin in the side, and for the first time since arriving in this galaxy, he felt his Kai's shield crack. His blood, crystallized instantly in the vacuum, tiny red jewels floating away from the wound in his side. Krillin, Kara's voice was panicked now. Your biosigns just spiked critical. What's happening? Inquisitor, Krillin gasped, dodging another shot by pure instinct. Black TIE fighter, Force user, and I'm running on empty here. The Inquisitor's fighter circled him like a predator, and through the canopy Krillin could see the pilot, a pawn with red-rimmed eyes and a smile that promised death. The Inquisitor spoke through a ship-to-ship channel, his voice cultured and cruel. The Emperor sends his regards, Anomaly. Your existence offends the natural order. You will be eliminated. Krillin tried to gather energy for a counterattack, but his Kai wouldn't respond properly. The sustained combat, the hostile universal environment, the wound in his side, it was all catching up with him. He was running on fumes, and the Inquisitor knew it. The Black TIE lined up another shot, weapons charging for what would clearly be a killing blow. And then the Inquisitor exploded. Not from Krillin's attack, he hadn't made one, but from a turbolaser bolt that came from an unexpected direction. Krillin turned his head weakly and saw a rebel corvette. The Redemption's escort vessel had positioned itself between him and the Inquisitor, its weapons batteries having made the shot. Kara's voice came through the communicator, steel beneath the concern. Nobody kills our warrior. All ships cover Krillin's retrieval. Get him aboard now. A rescue shuttle launched from the Redemption, flying at maximum burn toward Krillin's position. He tried to fly to meet it, but his body wasn't responding properly. The wound in his side was deeper than he'd thought, and blood loss was making his vision swim. The shuttle's mechanical arms grabbed him gently, pulling him into the cargo bay where medical personnel were already waiting. As the doors sealed and atmosphere rushed back in, Krillin took his first real breath in 20 minutes. It hurt, everything hurt. Stay with us, a medical officer was saying, pressing some kind of device against his wound. We've got you, just stay conscious. But consciousness was slipping away, darkness creeping in from the edges of his vision. The last thing Krillin heard before passing out was the ship's intercom announcing hyperspace jump in 10 seconds, and the relieved cheers of rebels who just witnessed the impossible. One warrior, 3-star destroyers. And somehow, against all odds, they'd survived. Krillin woke in the medical bay 3 days later. The first thing he noticed was the absence of pain. Whatever they'd used to treat him had worked remarkably well. The second thing was Dr. Sala sitting beside his bed, datapad in hand, looking exhausted but excited. "Welcome back," she said when she noticed his eyes open. "You've been out for 72 hours. The medical team said you were suffering from something they called complete energy depletion. Your body essentially shut down to conserve what little life force you had left." "Feels about right," Krillin croaked, his throat dry. "Water." She handed him a container with a straw. The liquid tasted odd, some kind of electrolyte solution, but it helped. "How bad was it?" "You had a puncture wound that went clean through your side, missing vital organs by centimeters. Blood loss that would have killed a normal human. And your energy readings," she shook her head. "I didn't know it was possible for someone's life force to drop that low and still survive." "I'm tougher than I look." Krillin tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. "Ow, okay, maybe not that tough right now." "Rest," Dr. Sala ordered. "Your body is still recovering. But Krillin, I need to tell you something. While you were unconscious, I kept analyzing the data from your fight. The energy expenditure patterns, the way your Kai interacted with the vacuum of space, the resonance frequencies. Her excitement was building again. Krillin recognized the look. It was the same expression Bulma got when she was on the verge of a breakthrough. "I think I've figured it out," Dr. Sala said softly. "How to send you home." Krillin's heart stopped. "What?" "Your energy. When you pushed it to absolute maximum, when you were using that Destructo Disc technique, it created microfractures in the dimensional barrier. Just for microseconds, but they were there. If we could artificially recreate those conditions, generate a stable rift instead of momentary fractures. You could punch a hole between universes," Krillin finished. "Exactly. It would require a massive power source, more than anything the rebellion has access to. But I've been researching, and there's a planet called Lothal. The Empire has been excavating force nexus points there, tapping into natural wells of energy. If we could access one of those nexus points, use it to amplify your Kai signature. We could create a dimensional rift," Krillin repeated, hope blooming in his chest for the first time in weeks. "A way home." Dr. Sala nodded. "It's theoretical, dangerous, probably impossible, but it's a chance." "I'll take it." Krillin's voice was firm despite his physical weakness. "What do we need to do?" "First, you need to recover fully. Second, we need to convince General Dodonna to authorize a mission to Lothal, which is deep in Imperial-controlled space. Third, we need to actually survive getting to the Force Nexus point and activating it without being caught or killed." "Sounds easy," Krillin said with a weak grin. Dr. Sala laughed despite herself. "You have a unique definition of easy. But yes, compared to fighting 3-star destroyers single-handedly, I suppose it's relatively straightforward." The medical bay door opened, and Kara entered, followed by General Dodonna. Both looked relieved to see Krillin awake. "How's our resident miracle worker?" Dodonna asked, his gruff voice carrying warmth. "Tired, sore, but alive." Krillin shifted carefully on the bed. "Did everyone make it off the redemption okay?" "Thanks to you, yes. 0 casualties during the escape." Dodonna's expression grew solemn. "The galaxy is buzzing with news of what happened. 3 Imperial Star destroyers disabled by a single warrior. It's already becoming legend. The Empire is trying to suppress the story, but you can't keep something like that quiet." "Great," Krillin muttered. "More attention, just what I needed." "It's good attention," Kara insisted. "For the first time in years, people across the galaxy are believing that the Empire can be beaten. You've given them hope." "Speaking of which," Dodonna said, "Dr. Sala briefed me on her theory about Lothal. It's risky, but if there's a chance to send you home." He paused. "I can't order anyone to go on a suicide mission to Imperial space, but if you're willing to go, I can authorize a volunteer team." "I'm going," Kara said immediately. "As am I," Dr. Sala added. "You'll need me there to calibrate the equipment and manage the energy transfer." Krillin looked between them, these friends he'd made in an impossible situation. "You don't have to do this. It's my way home, not yours." "You fought for us," Kara said simply. "Bled for us, nearly died for us. The least we can do is help you get back to your family." Family? The word hit Krillin like a physical blow. Android 18, Marin, Goku, and the others. Home. After weeks of uncertainty, after fighting and bleeding in a galaxy that wasn't his own, there was finally a real chance to return. "All right," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Let's do this. Let's go to Lothal and tear a hole between universes." Dodonna nodded. I'll authorize the mission and assemble a strike team. But Krillin, you need to understand, Lothal is heavily fortified. Governor Price rules it with an iron fist, and there are persistent rumors of something called the TIE Defender program being developed there. This won't be like Tatooine. You'll be walking into the heart of Imperial power. I've walked into worse, Krillin assured him. And this time I'll be at full strength. Give me a week to recover, and I'll show you what I can really do when I'm not running on empty. Over the next 7 days, Krillin focused on recovery and preparation. His body healed with the supernatural efficiency that Kai training provided, the wound in his side closing until it was just another scar among many. More importantly, his energy reserves refilled, and he spent hours meditating, learning to better harmonize his Kai with the Force-saturated environment. He couldn't make them compatible. They were fundamentally different energies, but he could minimize the interference, reduce the energy cost of techniques. By the end of the week, he could maintain his Kai shield in vacuum for hours instead of minutes, could fire Kamehameha waves at 70% efficiency instead of 50. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. The strike team assembled. Krillin, Kara, Dr. Sala, Tariq, Jocelyn, and 6 other rebel specialists. Their ship was a modified blockade runner called the Pathfinder, fast and equipped with experimental stealth technology that would hopefully get them past Imperial patrols. The night before departure, Krillin stood in the observation deck, watching the stars. Tomorrow, they'd begin the journey to Lothal. In a few days, if everything went right, he'd be home, back on Earth, back with his family. And if everything went wrong, well, at least he'd die trying. Couldn't sleep either. Kara's voice came from behind him. Krillin turned to find her approaching, 2 cups of something steaming in her hands. She offered him one, some kind of herbal tea that smelled vaguely like cinnamon. Just thinking, he admitted, about what happens next, about whether I'll actually make it home or if this is all just false hope. It's not false hope, Kara said firmly. Dr. Sala's brilliant. If she says it can work, it can work. And if it does, I'll never see any of you again. The realization hit Krillin suddenly. We'll never know what happens with your war, whether you beat the Empire, whether all this fighting means anything in the end. Kara was quiet for a moment. Maybe that's okay. Maybe the point isn't knowing how it ends, it's making the choice to fight anyway. You taught me that, you know. Watching you face impossible odds over and over, never backing down. That's what heroes do. I'm not a hero, Krillin protested weakly. Yes, you are. Maybe not in the way you think. Not because you're the strongest or the fastest, but because when people needed help, you helped. When the right thing was hard, you did it anyway. That's what makes someone a hero. Krillin thought about all the times he'd been scared, all the battles where he knew he was outmatched, all the moments he'd wanted to run but stayed anyway. Because that's what Master Roshi had taught him, what Goku had shown him through example, what being a Z-fighter meant. Your husband and daughter, Kara continued softly, they're lucky to have you. Wife, Krillin corrected automatically. Then he smiled. And yeah, I'm the lucky one actually. 18 is way out of my league, but somehow she said yes when I asked her to marry me, and we have this amazing daughter, and his voice caught. I miss them so much it hurts. Then let's make sure you get back to them. Kara raised her cup. To impossible journeys and the warriors brave enough to take them. Krillin raised his own cup, clinking it against hers. To getting home. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel by, 2 warriors from different worlds who'd found friendship in the strangest of circumstances. Tomorrow, the real journey would begin. The mission to Lothal, the attempt to tear open reality itself, the chance, however slim, to return to Earth. But tonight, Krillin allowed himself to simply exist in the moment, to appreciate the friends he'd made, the lives he'd saved, the difference he'd made in a galaxy that wasn't his own, and to dream of the moment when he'd see his family again. The mission to Lothal would be the most dangerous operation the rebellion had ever attempted, infiltrating Imperial space, accessing a Force nexus point, and attempting to tear a hole between universes using technology that existed more in theory than practice. The odds of success were microscopic, the odds of survival even smaller. But Krillin had spent his entire life defying odds. As the Pathfinder prepared for departure, he stood in his quarters one final time, looking at the small holographic projector Dr. Sala had given him. She'd managed to extract images from his memories using some kind of brain-scanning technology, fuzzy, imperfect, but recognizable. Android 18's face looked back at him, her expression caught mid-laugh at some joke he couldn't remember. Marin beside her, gap-toothed and grinning, her hair in pigtails. Goku in the background, doing something ridiculous. Master Roshi's island in the distance. Home. I'm coming, Krillin whispered to the images. I don't know how and I don't know when, but I promise I'm coming home. The images flickered and faded as the ship's engines powered up. Through his viewport, Krillin watched the stars begin to move, the Pathfinder accelerating toward hyperspace and the unknown future beyond. In 3 weeks, he'd fought Dark Lords and Star Destroyers. He'd made friends in an impossible place. He'd proven that even in a galaxy bound by the Force, willpower and training could overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. He'd given hope to people who'd forgotten what hope felt like. But none of it compared to the simple desire burning in his heart, to hold his daughter again, to see his wife's rare, genuine smile, to train with Goku on the lookout and complain about how the younger generation had it easy. The Pathfinder entered hyperspace and the familiar blue-white tunnel enveloped them. Ahead lay Lothal, danger, and a chance, however slim, at redemption and return. Behind lay a galaxy forever changed by the presence of one warrior from beyond the stars. The rebellion would continue its fight, inspired by the knowledge that the Empire could be beaten. Vader would meditate on the seeds of doubt planted in his heart, wondering if redemption was truly impossible. And across 1,000 worlds, people who'd heard the story of the glowing warrior would dare to believe that hope, however fragile, still existed. But for Krillin, all of that was secondary. His mission was simple: survive whatever came next, activate the dimensional rift, and find his way back to the people who mattered most. He'd faced gods and monsters. He'd died and been resurrected. He trained until his body broke and rebuilt himself stronger. One more impossible challenge wouldn't stop him. "Hang on," he said to the holographic images stored in his memory, to the family waiting across the dimensional barrier, to the life he'd been torn from and would move heaven and earth to reclaim. "I'm coming home. I don't care if I have to fight the entire Empire to do it. I'm coming home." The stars streamed past, and in the distance, Lothal waited. The final battle was about to begin.